I would like to call the meeting to order, document the time at 6:36. And if you would stand with me, please, and for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just by way of a couple of quick introductions, we have some friends from the Burlington School Board with us here tonight to observe in their quest on some governance items. We've got a focus on learning folks, and we've also going to have a little bit later on, we're going to have a discussion on our last piece of our end statement, and that is the global engagement, and what does that mean? What does it look like? How do we know that it's there, and how do you instill it in folks? So we've had some folks from the area volunteer to come in and help us out with that discussion. So with that, and just because we've got folks here by way of, again, introduction, one of our items up front in our agenda is a mindfulness piece. It has come to me to be a mental transition between my work day and my board day. Tori has been leading us through that, so this is a few moments of transition, I'll say. So Tori, if you would take it away, I'd appreciate it.
So tonight for mindfulness, we lost a community member a couple days ago, so we're going to hold for Brianna Moore some space around loss and also celebration. So everybody just gets a comfortable seat and take a deep breath in. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable. And take a deep breath in, straighten up, and breathe out. I want to breathe in relationships and community. And how they foster a sense of ourselves and a sense of each other. And when we lose someone, how is it that we can hold loss and celebration and equanimity and find peace within both? So take a couple deep breaths in. You can breathe in love and breathe out healing. For those of us that knew family, you can send out love and healing to the family members. We can also breathe in that connection to all families and all communities who have lost members. And make a grand connection in love. And on your next deep breath in and out, you can come back into the room.
Well done. Okay, agenda review. Any items in here for review and or adjustment? All right. Oh, just to pass along, I did hear from Muhammad, who is sick tonight, so he won't be joining us. All right. Focus on learning, well-being as portion of the graduate expectations.
Right. So I would like to just kick this portion off and to let everybody know that the focus around one of our graduate expectations, which is well-being, directly connected to our push around organizational health and wellness, both for staff and students. And we're going to start off tonight with Principal Leon Wheeler, who's going to talk about the work that has been done in this past year around the graduate expectation of well-being in the middle high school. And he has some of his staff who will be here and talk about what that looks like in the classrooms with students, as well as maybe a student or so who's will either share their work or we will share that for them. And we will finish with J.C. Putlis, who is our wellness coordinator, the only full-time wellness coordinator in the state of Vermont. We are happy to talk about. And She gave a full wellness update in the spring when you were reviewing the wellness policy in addition to all the programming that's going on. So she's going to do an update on some of those things and some of the grants that we've received in the past 6 months or so, because her work and others who work with her, like our wellness leaders, they really hold up the concept of wellness across the organization, which really supports the graduate expectations and the enthusiasm that staff and students show for being well. Leon.
Health and wellness are also connected to our end state.
Welcome back, Leon. Good to have you.
Oh, yeah.
Used to be here all the time.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't see you often here. Sometimes we jump in a lake together,
That's right.
but not here.
Yay! Oh, listen. Well done, big one.
Speaking of wellness.
Do you want to turn the light off
So
so
many
we,
different ways.
want to turn the light off so we can see them?
Yes.
Yeah,
that'd be
that'd be
great.
Which one? Which one's
Try that
up?
one
This
over there.
So just as a brief orientation first, this year for the first time, we are exploring the Wellness GX rubric. And for the previous 2 years, we've been working with the critical thinking and the communication GXs. This year, we've added another dimension, and that is the wellness. What you see on the board on the screen here is the dimensions that the teacher group defined that fit into wellness. And so the process we use for defining the rubrics, how we're going to measure students' progression, is to get a teacher team together. They draft it. They draft this rubric. They come back to the leadership team. The leadership team gives them feedback. They revise it. They come back to the whole faculty. The faculty gives them feedback. They go back and they revise it. And they came up with these dimensions and this descriptor. So you'll be oriented to that probably a little bit more as well, but you can take a look at it now. So the 4 dimensions that we have, actually I have to, is this one opened up, Sean? Yep. Okay. Assuming, oh, that's not it. Okay, I'll open it up. So we're going to distribute to you, I guess you're getting it now. This is the Well-Being GX. And you'll see in the center of the rubric, you'll see in the center of the rubric, this column identifies the dimensions, and then the progression from the exceeding and what we would expect that would look like in any one dimension. So the rubric was developed. It's in a draft form, but a form that teachers can use. Our next step is to say to teachers that are interested, play around with this rubric. Explore it. See what you can learn around how you can teach and support student growth and how we can assess, because eventually we're going to need to develop a complex assessment that shows us how students are really progressing. And so this year, we had several groups of teachers, several teachers that wanted to play around with the rubric, and you're going to see 3. Team Nexus decided they wanted to try it in a couple of different ways, and then Sue Messier, our PE teacher, and Vicki Walensky, our high school health teacher, also were exploring and still are exploring the GX. The use of this rubric. And so I'm going to invite them to come up, and we'll start with Callie. And you'll get a little bit more introduced to the rubric and also to how they're using it in with their students. So,
Yeah.
So Vicky is passing out something right now. I'm going to ask that you guys flip it to the back to do an activity. So I'm Callie Ranker. I'm a middle school math teacher on Team Nexus, and I also teach a PBL class on wellness. So I'm going to ask that your papers be flipped to the blank side on the back. And you are going to have 1 minute to be thinking about one thing that you do in your daily life that may be getting in the way of your own well-being. So maybe a bad habit that you have, a choice that you make that you could change a little bit. And just write that thing down. You don't have to share.
Need more paper?
I needed that prelude.
And once you've thought of that one thing that may be getting in the way, think of a way that you can help yourself give that up, cut back on it, make a small change for 1 week and commit to it. So this is how every Monday starts in PBL class. Wellness PBL on Team Nexus is a class that I teach with Andy Thibodeau. It is a 12-student class. Andy is a special educator on our team. And we meet for 45 minutes each day, and we explore one of the wellness topics. So for last semester, we focused on physical wellness and the various aspects of that. Weekly challenges, they may be very similar to yours that you just did. Students they tend to say they'll give up cookies or soda or screen time or things like that. And we use journals to keep track of their progress and check in on how they're doing and how this is impacting their own well-being. Reflection is a huge part of this GX, and it's on the rubric, as well as self-awareness. So we try to do that, especially for the middle school, on a daily, small, scaffolded way. For JANPO this year, everyone's familiar with JANPO? Not everyone? Okay. The celebration of learning at the end of the first semester, we focused on physical well-being. So all students had a journal throughout the first semester where they recorded what we were doing as far as what is happening in the class. So we started with physical activity, and we wanted students to be exposed to things that they wouldn't normally be exposed to. So we took them ice skating. We had them doing jazzercise. We had CrossFit come in. The kids loved it. They hated it. They recorded how they felt about the different things. We're hoping that this will help them find things that they like, why they like them, and create healthy habits. CrossFit was a win for everyone. Students have actually asked for it to come back, and it is now part of TAs in the middle school. We are fortunate to have a CrossFit instructor as part of our staff. We also looked at food and nutrition, how what we put in our bodies affects not only our physical wellness, but our mental emotional wellness as well. The benefit of me being a math teacher is I could facilitate some interdisciplinary learning by having this be part of the math class as well, teaching fractions, all that kind of thing, while making healthy snacks, and the kids really loved that. We also went out into the community. We took a field trip to the gas station that's on the way to school where most students stop. And we were going to try to find healthier options instead of the bags of chips that we like to bring to school. And we found out that there actually are little to no healthy foods there. So that's inspired a project that we are going to be working on later in the year. So what is next? We are going to be identifying the strengths and the weaknesses of this program on our team and take intentional steps to grow, which is what the GX is all about.
Using it in multiple ways.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vicki Walensky, the Health and Family Consumer Science teacher. Happy to be here. So I'm kind of going to be repeating a little bit of what Callie said earlier. But actually, before I get started, if you guys can flip that sheet back over, please. I actually do a lot of free writing in all of the health classes that I teach. We usually get a little bit more in depth with this, but for the sake of time, I kept it very short. So if you guys can please just answer this question, what component of the wellness wheel could you personally improve in your own life? Like an example for me would be my family and I, we just moved back to Vermont, thank goodness, very recently, and I still have not, where we used to live, I had a church that I used to go to all the time, and I loved it, and it made me feel good, and since we've been back here, I've just been so crazy busy with, buying and selling houses, and so I've kind of put that on the back burner. So that's what I would write about for this. I would write about that component of the wellness wheel. So you can take, say, 45 seconds to respond to that. Okay, and for the sake of time, I won't ask anybody to share. Usually in classes, I give the opportunity for people to share, but I won't do that. But as you guys can see, the wellness wheel is incorporated in all the different classes. Also, in each one of the classes I teach, we create SMART goals, which are actually embedded in the rubric that you have in front of you. And so every single student in all of my classes will create a SMART goal, and then every week we kind of check in and we see where they are at and how I can help them improve. And then at the end of the semester, once the class is over, we see if they have reached those goals. So we do that in addition to all the other curriculum that's done, okay? So I just took a couple of pictures here, and then I put the components that are in the rubric. I just put which one we're touching upon with some of the projects that I took some pictures of. So this is a middle school class I have. We did a collage on self-esteem and bullying, and so they're working on that there. Same. This is I think this is my food and nutrition class that I'm teaching. They chose topics to research. So they did factory farming, nutrition and health, world hunger, factory farming. Dooley was very excited about his presentation, as you can see. And it's nice because we're also incorporating, the other components like oral presentation and all of that. So it's pretty cool. eating disorders, obesity in America. And I'm really lucky in that I have the 4 kitchens that are utilized, I think, just about on a daily basis, which is really cool. So we do this. We use the kitchens, took a couple, they're actually pretending to cook right there. So that would be why the eggs are on the I said, well, it's okay. I can't really take up much more time doing this. But I actually have a class of like 23 students in this class, and we're going to be cooking. It's going to be interesting because it's a really big class. All right. So we do a lot of speeches. We do a lot of research. GMOs. This was just, I wish I had taken more pictures. Had I known I was doing this, I would have taken more during JanPo. This is just one of the projects that I had still in my classroom. But they did these choice projects so they could do like alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. They can do self-esteem or STI prevention, any of that stuff. And so they chose those things, and then they presented these at JanPo. And of course, that pertains to self-awareness, reflection, and growth. A student did that, self-management, reflection, and growth. This student is very artistic, and she was not happy with the way this turned out, so she actually completely redid that. That was her first draft. I don't know. I thought the first draft was pretty good. We do a lot of talking about bullying, cyberbullying, namely cyberbullying. A lot of that, these are just some posters that some students have made. And then just a couple other projects that we do. I have the Lund Family Planning comes in and they bring in a teen pregnancy panel, which students really, really enjoy. They also do an STI, HIV, AIDS prevention panel, which is really good. After school classes, baking with vegetables and fruits, college research, independent living, the Wellness Wheel projects, which is what actually one of the classes I teach. It's kind of like the iLab model, and we actually focus on one of these components for 2 weeks at a time, and then they choose a topic that pertains to that specific topic. So we started off this semester with emotional, and so some people did research on like depression or anxiety, things like that, and then they presented it also. And so the next one, we're going to go around this way. The next one we're going to be focusing on is spiritual, and so on. And then, of course, the SMART goals, like I had said earlier, is just something that's implemented in addition to the regular curriculum. So that's that. I could talk forever, but I don't want to take up too much time. There you go, Stu. Thank you. Yeah. What's that?
Good luck with the cooking.
Yeah, it's so fun. They love it.
Big classes.
Yeah, this particular class, most of the classes aren't quite that big, but it's all.
Preview.
You don't have to fill all this out, just look at it. In your own mind, think about how you would answer it.
Go down.
Gotta get the weight training.
Get the white.
It'll only take you 30 seconds. I'm Sue Messier. I teach physical education to the middle and high school, and I'm very sick, so bear with me. I use disinfectant, so don't worry. Can you go to the other one? That's the second one, Sean's. I have a couple of real quick examples of what some of my students did for the January Expo. One of them was, that's the first one. One of them was a second-year student. He's in my weight training class, which is kind of misleading because they can make goals for any kind of fitness with their body. It doesn't really have to include weight training. And you'll see this is a fine example. In the beginning of the year, my students fill out this purple sheet. They come up with a goal for their own body. They have a unique opportunity to work in the weight room for about 45 minutes, and I have lots of different types of equipment, and we pretty much work out personalized learning programs for them. They come up with their own fitness program, or they can use a generic one that I have. Sean Callahan, as you'll see, if you can read this, you probably can't. He was with me his sophomore year, and he had a goal of jumping. He wants to dunk, let's be real. So he had a height that he wanted to get to, and then junior year, he blew out his ankle, and he had to have surgery. So senior year, he was back. We worked on healing the ankle through physical therapy exercises, and then we proceeded, and if you'll see, He's very candid about things that will get in his way in the sheets, whether it's soreness from his PT exercises or frustration or just not having the correct attitude. What we do is I make them revisit their goals halfway through the year, which is what they did just before JanPo. He scribbled down the program that he and I worked out together. It's kind of a plyometrics jumping / core, a program that we both came to together. And he's been doing this for almost 2 years. Here's some pictures of him doing it. Planking and taps with a medicine ball. He does all types of jumping exercises. I don't know where my pictures went. He jumps. I mean, one way to get better at jumping is by practice jumping. So we do it in several different ways. A leapfrog. There's videos there, but I'll pass. I actually provided him with a rubric and asked him to grade himself. Kids are actually much harder on themselves. He didn't circle the self-awareness one, which he's pretty much mastered because he knows where he is and what he needs to get to. He excelled at the growth, the self-management, and reflection. He's nailed all those. He's exceeding. So that's pretty much how we started his presentation, by saying, this is where I am. This is how I got here. So that's the first example. Thanks for reading. Second one, real quick. The other one is from a freshman. I have the luxury of having the freshmen all year. So what we do is we do a sample of fitness testing that starts in 3rd grade up. Fortunately, I have middle school and high school, so I have the results from middle school. This is Nicole LaPlante, and she's comparing, the previous scores are from her middle school, and she's comparing her test results from this year that we did the whole beginning of the year. This is actually very hard for students to stay focused, because afterwards they're like, oh, I could have done better. So I give them several opportunities to do this. Those are the 6 fitness tests we do. We tie them into components of fitness. You'll see here she says flexibility. She defines it, and then she tells you which tests test the flexibility. And there's an example of it. She gives you her current, recent, and if she's in the healthy zone. Shoulder stretch is the other one. Muscular strength and endurance, again, defines it, tells you which tests they are. And she's analyzing, as she's filling the slideshow out, she's analyzing herself for her strengths and weaknesses in the different components of fitness. And then cardiovascular endurance, which she did really, really well on. She was very happy. And then she went into the benefits. So that's the younger freshmen. At the end of the year, these same freshmen, I've been teaching them lifts for each 6 major muscle group, and they'll take the results of this fitness testing where they've already analyzed their body, and they'll create their own lifting program at the end of the year, meeting their goal, whatever the freshman, their goal is, based on their test results. So if they feel they have a weakness, they'll have all the information and create their own lifting program. So they don't have to go out and pay for that. They can do that themselves. But that's it. Thank you.
So that's, those are some of the ways that we're exploring in the middle high school this GX rubric in order to really figure out and come up with what it means to be proficient in this GX. So that's a step that's down the road a little ways, is to really develop that GX complex assessment and move forward with that. So thank you. I am now going to turn it over to JC.
Thank you, yeah. I think I can do it, right? I got it. Okay. I'm on. I got the clicker.
Oh, no, I know. It wasn't in present mode. That's fine.
Oh. Do you want it in present mode or can you see this? Okay. So, I think everybody here knows me. My name is JC Putlitz. I'm the wellness coordinator, and as Sean said, the only full-time wellness coordinator in the state of Vermont. And so what I do here is both student and staff wellness. So, and now a little bit of community wellness. So to start that off, our Mindful City project, as Sean told you, is in our 2nd year funding, yay, from the Vermont Community Foundation. So we had our kickoff meeting a couple weeks ago with the chief of police. Deke was there. Tori was there, some of our mindfulness teachers were there, a couple of students were there representing the school, and Kate and Sarah were there. Kate is our middle school assistant principal in the middle high school, and Sarah is our JFK principal. So we all kind of kicked off our second year, what we'd like to see happen in this second year of the Mindful City project. So what you'll see happening this year is more engagement into our community. Mindfulness started within the schools. It's kind of trickling out. Our students, we met with them. We kicked off the student kind of leadership team, a group of students who will be training to do mindfulness within the school and outside of the school into the community. So as a part of our meeting, we talked about 4 different subgroups that we have that are all kind of interlaced. The school district, the police department, our community, and our families. And the community families is very connected together because our families are in the community, and that brings the community into the school. We also, just today I met with VSAC to find out if there was a way to find a space where our employees of Winooski could start practicing mindfulness, and it was a very positive meeting. They have a beautiful space in their building. They're going to just go back, I met with their HR team, and they're going to go back to their the director there and just find out, what would be the barriers, and if they could invite other employees of Winooski from the Rotary area to come to practice mindfulness all together. So our vision for this is that VSAC would host a space for employees of Winooski to come in. I know, Tori's all smiling. So that was kind of a quick update on that. We do have the funding all year long, so it's not like we're in a rush to do this school year. If we need to take our time and make sure that we are on track for next year, maybe we can do some more work over the summer into the next year. A positive note that I've heard is that Woodstock is very interested in what we're doing here. The school there is implementing the program that we used, the CML Mod Mind program, and they were like, "Oh, the whole city's doing it now." I was like, "That's our goal." So, pretty excited about having people kind of watch us. Okay, you've already heard a lot about what's going on with our student wellness and the Wellness GX. The work that I bring in, or the work that I do, is kind of like wraparound services for our students. For instance, in the middle school, we have our SIM program, which you all have probably seen it about. In our middle school, we have Spartans in Motion, and in our middle school, they don't have like a free recess. We have a structured recess, and the teachers are on board with that. The teachers lead them in circuit training or other activities to keep them physically active throughout the day. So we're really excited about our student advisory board. So we have a group of students that come together to advise the teachers on what they think they should be doing in their Spartans in Motion programs. So some of the exciting programs, we have a Bush and Taekwondo class, which also provides some leadership opportunities for our students. The Spartan Games, so the students kind of tell us what they like to compete on for their Spartan Games each season. We just shot a video to provide a 7-minute circuit training. So some students went out and did a video of themselves, and right now they're editing that to bring in March. And then we just started talking about using the SIM program to help transition our 5th graders into middle school. So, even though we're in one building, it's a big jump to go from one side to the other. So we're going to be starting to do some SIM with the exercise program with the 5th graders, so they know what to expect when they come in. Our nutrition programs, you're going to hear from Rebecca next month, I think, on how the CEP is doing. So I just want to say, yay, we have breakfast in the classroom in JFK after the bell. And I have to stress after the bell because we've been providing breakfast here for all of our students. But the point is, they don't always arrive in time to get it. So having breakfast in the classroom after school begins, every student has an opportunity to have breakfast. So we see fewer of those chip bags coming from the gas station because they know they're going to get fed here. And I had one parent tell me one day, she's like, we just didn't have enough time for breakfast. I said, well, that's why we have breakfast here. So she has, her daughter has an opportunity to make sure she's well fed when she gets to school. So that's going really, really well. And then one thing that we have here are in JFK, they have the snack program. That's going well. What we've noticed in the middle high schools, we don't really have a snack program for them. So the Winooski Education Association has funded some fairly healthy snacks. They're not regulated, but we have a lot of hungry students in the afternoon, especially when we have students who are non-traditional, who are in their 20s, and their meal requirements are much higher. Their caloric intake is much higher than what's being served to them in the cafeteria. So they're very hungry. So having those snacks available to them is very important to us. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to keep that going. They also clean out all of any leftover snacks. So as a part of having free meals for everybody, there's a lot of leftover food in the morning, but by the afternoon that food is gone because the high schoolers are asking for it. And the Vermont Food Bank is still coming, and we're actually really excited because they keep teasing me that they're going to offer summer dates, so I'm hoping that we're going to get that. They are providing someone to come and do taste tests. So for the turnips, for instance, a lot of people don't know what turnips are or how to cook them. A woman is here, and she's doing taste tests for turnips. What do we have? Also some summer squash. That was really good. So I'm going to move on to employee wellness. I'm going to hold on this for a second because I just want to jump ahead. Other initiatives that we've done. This year was a huge year for us because we are focusing on environmental wellness, composting and recycling. We have the 2 bins in the cafeteria now, and they're being used during lunch and at breakfast at times. So we are beginning to compost now. We're still working through that to make sure that the compost is getting to where it needs to go. And then what we'll look at next year is getting into composting into the in the classrooms. So, and along with that, for our farm to school, even though we don't have an official farm to school program, we have a lot of farm to school projects and activities that happen here in Winooski. So I just kind of like bring them all together. And what's really exciting about that is a student, as a part of his, I believe it was his iLab project or a community problem solving project, wanted to build a greenhouse on site. So now we're working with our with the VYCC and grounds and maintenance to find out where could we put this greenhouse. Winooski doesn't have a lot of space. Well, we're going to try and find that space. And VYCC would like to see it to be a production greenhouse. So we'll see if we can get to that point of it. So I just wanted to kind of talk about some of that. And then I'm going to jump back, if I do have a few minutes, to talk about employee wellness real fast, because it is so important for our teachers to be healthy, to be able to teach, our students to be healthy. I think we've had a little bit of a growth in employee wellness in the last couple of years. Through VHI, the Vermont Education Health Initiative, we have 5 leaders on site. So there are 2 in JFK, 2 in the middle high school, and then myself. We meet once in a while and we talk about what is needed. Through the planned action towards health, we increased the number of registered users. And this year, 83 employees participated in VHI's Healthy Life Survey, which is kind of a full assessment of their health. And versus 31 last year, because VHI had a big push for that. So I'm really excited that we have some really true good data of a majority of our employees and what their health risks are. The number 1 health risk is cholesterol. And when I looked at the data, I realized that even though it said 71% of those 83 were at risk for cholesterol, well, then it turns out that actually 50% of those at risk don't even know what their numbers are. So they just say, okay, well, that's at risk if you don't know what your numbers are. So some of the things that we'd like to do is make sure that our employees are taking care of themselves. We received a grant. I'm not sure if you heard yet. We did not get the Blue Cross Blue Shield grant, which Mike, you had kind of signed, we talked about. We didn't get that one, but because of our proposal was kind of interesting to VHI, they did give us funding so that we could have a woman come to talk about developing your wellness goals. So our students are talking about creating their goals. Now we're going to kind of work with our teachers to help them figure out their goals and stay kind of true to them and see how they can be accomplished. So really quick, I'm going to jump forward to, this is a SWOT chart that it assesses strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats And at the beginning of the year, our teachers, as a part of this exploration of the wellness rubric, the teachers that were talking about that said, well, here's one way that we could do this, is use a SWOT chart. So identify your strengths and weaknesses. So now we want to take that to the teachers and give them an opportunity to do it for themselves as well. They did fill one out at the beginning of the year, but by having someone from a wellness goals group work with them individually on this, it gives them an opportunity to actually achieve those changes that they identify. And then some fun things that we've done, we did a fun run, we had chair massages, and so that was another one of our risk, in the risk assessment, the Healthy Life Survey, shoulder and neck tension. 43% of our employees were experiencing shoulder and neck tension. So during a very stressful time of the year, which was right before the holidays, we had two chair massage come in, and for over a period of a couple days, employees were treated to this, and it was so successful. Let me just say, it was really positive. We're going to bring them back in April, so people like Sue who couldn't make it in December will have an opportunity to do that. Our Wellness Day is coming up, and I'm going to end on that one because Wellness Day is one of the most exciting days here at for our teachers. It's a day where we get to take care of ourselves and build our community together. Wellness Day is an entire day where right now I have 36 different activities lined up so employees choose from 4 different blocks, 36 different activities, such as Zumba, yoga, jazzercise. They'll be working on their wellness goals. We have embroidery, we have coloring, we have art, drumming. Someone's coming in to do drumming. So it's a wide variety of things to touch. Almost everything in that wellness wheel that we've talked about, the emotional wellness, the social wellness, physical wellness, environmental wellness, when we talk about gardening and composting. So that's about it. Some other things that we're going to be doing for our employees are listed up there. So good. Sure.
Thank you very much. So with that, we'll move down into item 4, public comments. A lot of public. Any comments? Had to ask. All right. Into 5, consent agenda. I'd accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Well done, penguin plungers.
Thank you for all the support.
Yes, definitely. Thank you guys for the support.
Thanks for coming.
So moving right along, I did have one item. In the childcare parking lot agreement, it still references the old car parts place, so I just asked that we update that to at least put the current name on the building in the contract. Whether that's there next year, we'll find out, but
Got it.
at least it's updated. Anything else? Okay, I would accept a motion, or I already did. All those in favor, accept the consent agenda? Aye? Opposed? All right. So now, we can move into section 6, which is our last in our installment. Yeah, sorry, if you guys want to go, now is a perfect time. I should have thought of that before the consent, sorry.
Basketball game?
That, off to the senior basketball game, yes, senior night, yep,
Oh, it is senior night?
yeah,
That's big.
yes, enjoy.
Have fun.
All right, yes, thank you. We'll take that. So this is our 4th installment of trying to get a deeper definition of our ends statement. We've gone through a college-ready forum, which outlined what does it mean to be college-ready, how do we know, how would we even measure that? Career-ready, same issue. Locally engaged, I think, was also a good discussion that is a little more tangible to be able to put your hands on. I'm looking forward to this one as a global engagement, and that is how, in the last section of our end statement, how do we view that? What is it? What does it mean? And so we've invited a few folks to help us with that discussion. So if you guys would not mind, this would be a great time. What I'd like to do is take your chairs and put them on the end of the table here so we don't have to keep looking over into a crowd. Look right at you. So nobody trips. Yeah, if you could just put them right here across the front. We'll have your back to the camera, but that's okay. You can face it.
Got it over here too.
Yep. All right. Well,
No complaints there.
Yeah, it'd be good to keep going.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, this is going to be a little awkward for you, but
Might need to slide one more, I think. Yeah, I think so. Are we all in?
Maybe a little more.
we got a good.
Going?
Tori, were you able to?
We're calling right now.
Okay.
He was up 15 minutes ago.
So I got name tags, but short of wearing them on your head. It will be easier for me because I've got this short disease that I can't remember. So put your names here.
You can put them in order and just work it out. No. Yeah, I sent your Tatum's name to you this afternoon.
Caitlin.
Tatum.
Taylor. Oh,
Oh, that'd be great.
that's all right. Side there, so I can-
There's a marker.
then I can actually call you yourself. All right.
Do you hear me? Yes. All right. We have another member.
Yes, so if you could,
So, Hazy, I'm going to put you on the table next to. There's Mike.
How you doing? Thank you for joining us. All right.
Thanks for staying awake.
Hopefully he'll be able to hear. I'll try to keep the volume up just a little bit. So,
All right, so we're about to go through introductions.
yeah. Oh, there we go. Great.
Can y'all,
Thank you.
there you go. Here's Hello.
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 Hello, hi, good morning. Or actually, I don't know.
Yep,
Yeah.
for you it's 2 a.m. We have
So it's
greatly
2 a.m.
appreciate you
Oh,
staying.
my goodness.
So if we can start with you by way of introduction, if I could just have you briefly name what you do for real work, in your case, where you are, and
Okay.
then we'll get started. Go ahead.
Okay, so, well, I'm Ziad Sabaha. I work for IUCN, and I'm with the regional office for West Asia. IUCN is the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So I work on marine and coastal zone management program in all West Asia. Well, we work on species. We work on developing fisheries for improved livelihood, marine protected areas, and a couple of other stuff. And I'm actually now in Beirut, Lebanon. Well, I know it sounds a little bit scary for you on the other side. You know, Beirut is always linked with bizarre things, but no, I'm just on the safe side.
Well, we're glad to hear that.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Todd Jr. I'm in Vermont right now. I work for Spectrum Youth and Family Services as the Multicultural Youth Program Coordinator and as a Jump on Board for Success clinician. As of right now, we're doing work in the community. We're working with diverse and multicultural youth, primarily with new American, refugee, and immigrant identified youth, by creating new resources and connecting them to existing resources that they didn't previously have access to.
Hi, everyone. I'm Libby Houghton. I am a support staff member at Winooski Middle High School. I'm a tutor coordinator and co-facilitator of the Peace Jam Club, which we've been here in that capacity a few times. So just a little background, the Peace Jam Club is a group that originally started as a multicultural club that met in the school during lunch and evolved into an after-school group that connected with the international organization Peace Jam. The international organization is headed by a number of Nobel Peace Prize laureates who guide much of the work that the Peace Jam clubs around the world do. We are the only Peace Jam club in the state of Vermont, and working on trying to make that that not be the case in the future, so we can have some more partnership in this work.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Tatum McBride. I'm a junior. This is my first year at Winooski. I started the Pride Club with another student, and I'm also part of the Peace Jam. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what the meeting brings.
Great, thank you.
My name is Melissa Mason. I am a 9 through 12 math teacher here at the high school. I also am co-advisor of the Peace Jam Club here at Winooski. We've been to a couple of Connecticut conferences where we were able to bring a large majority of our Peace Jam Club students to, so that they can meet a couple of the Nobel laureates. So that was very eye-opening for them, and a really great experience. I also have been kind of blessed with the chance to work on the GX work for our culture and community GX to build that rubric. So that was nice to do.
Yeah, hi. My name is Matt Schlein. I am founder and director of the Walden Project and the Willowell Foundation. And the Walden Project is based out of Virginia's High School, and it's for students grades 10 through 12, and it's predicated on Thoreau's time that he spent in the woods with the 3 key questions he asked. What's my relationship with myself? What's my relationship to the natural world? And what's my relationship to my society and culture? And so all of the curriculum is sort of through those 3 questions. It's interdisciplinary rather than meet in the classroom. We use the woods as our primary classroom space, but we will be culture vultures and descend on Burlington and Winooski and other cultural climates to just make use of the resources that are here in the community. And just real briefly, the Willowell Foundation is a nonprofit based out of Moncton, Vermont, and it's devoted to the consilience of arts, education, and the environment.
Well, thank you all for being here, greatly appreciated. I've kicked off most of the other discussions with what I thought at least was a fairly direct request to get the discussion started. The career ready to me seemed to be pretty straightforward, pretty easy. College ready seemed to be pretty straightforward. Locally engaged, again, you can tell when kids go out into the community, whether they're actually passionate about what they do, seem to be the distinction, whether it's really engaged or just checking the box. Thinking about how to kick this one off, I struggled. I really did. To understand, what we're trying to understand here is one of the items in our end statement is our students, when they leave, will be globally engaged. Career ready, college ready, locally engaged, and globally engaged. We're going to look to Sean, our superintendent, to build into the curriculum or the daily life of our students things that are going to get them to be hopefully globally engaged. What we're trying to do is define things. What does that look like? How do you instill it in kids? So I'd like to open up the discussion, and then I'll open it up to my board members here. But I'd like to open up the discussion of, in my mind at least to start, is there a difference between global engagement and global awareness? And is awareness enough? Who would like to, anybody like to try to at least help me start to organize that thought?
Start with the softball here.
Yeah, wow.
Go ahead. Said? Yeah, Said, please.
Okay, so there is a difference. There's actually, awareness. You could be aware, and it ends here. You could just have received some, awareness through a brochure, through a website, through some, educational activity. But it won't really make you engage. Well, some people need just a little bit of awareness, and something triggers them, and then they become engaged. Whereas just being globally aware is like, okay, you know what's happening around, you know things, but you don't care. Whereas globally engaged is like, you really care and you're really involved globally on a lot of matters. Like one of the biggest things that we should be all kind of engaged about is like microplastics. I know that, and sorry if sometimes, you know, I would take a little bit things too much into nature, but you know, because nature provides us everything, and nature keeps on providing us free services until they are disrupted, and then we realize that okay, we lost them. And this is something, and this would link back to globally engaged, because like trees, corals, whatever, mangroves, forests, they give us free services that we take for granted, and then. But the awareness is the other way. It's like, okay, trees, they give us oxygen and shade, and that this is awareness. But engagement, you know more the services of the ecosystem services and how we deal with nature and so on. Okay,
Good.
that's it.
Great, thank you. Good start. Greatly appreciated. Anybody want to piggyback? Matt?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of the relationship between sort of the global and the local, that they really are inextricably linked, and I think we see, you know, Winooski is famous for sort of being a microcosm of the larger macrocosm of the intersection of different cultures. So I think that we can engage, I think if one is engaged truly locally, that there's going to be sort of that global resonance with it. So I think in many ways it's about an attitude of agency that students have in relationship first to their own life. Do they feel as if they are the authors of their story? Do they feel like that they can articulate their goals as learners and pursue them in a meaningful way? And I think concomitant with that is if you feel empowered about yourself, then you feel as if your actions as you engage with the world will have some resonance as well. So I think the distinction between global and local is maybe not so important. I think that we see, you know, I just think it's the nature of this interconnected world that we live in. I mean, here we are in Winooski, Vermont. We have a gentleman from Beirut, Lebanon, giving us good counsel as to, you know, how we can improve programming. So I think that just by engaging issues in thoughtful ways, there'll be these natural connections between the global and local. But I see it mostly related to a sense of student agency, and I think if they feel agency around their own selves, then they're inclined towards positively intersecting with the world.
Just to piggyback off of that, I completely agree. I think student agency is very important, and we refer to it as youth leadership. One of my colleagues, Jitan Kaka, he's a youth ambassador for international youth leadership. I think they call a cohort or a little traveling group. But he speaks to the fact that youth need to feel empowered. They need to feel like they have control over their lives, over what they learn, over what interests them, and in that context. And that, to me, is connected to local engagement and local awareness. I think you have to start locally before you can even start to think about globally, especially when you deal with the young population. I think providing the access and providing the settings and the tools to become their own leaders, or giving them self-guidance and giving them sustainable tools is, I think, the right way to go for them to start to become more globally aware and more globally engaged.
I think that some of the work that has even been shown this evening is evidence to that. When given an opportunity to explore a topic that is personally connected to the individuals, we see that the evidence of that passion in their work, and the posters that clearly have a lot more attention to detail involved in them. So I would also agree with that personal agency and self-direction is essential. I also would, just thinking about this awareness and engagement comparison, maybe for lack of a better word, but I think that my sense is that there needs to be some level of awareness in order to be engaged, whether it's locally or globally. And something that you mentioned, Mike, the need for things. And I had to look over to Tatum, because I was just talking to her about it today, that I've noticed looking around our classrooms that we have a limited number of actual physical globes in our classrooms. I'm thinking, these last couple of weeks, I've been thinking about global engagement. And what does that mean if you don't have a context for your physical place as it relates to other people, to the natural world? And so that kind of awareness, that easy access to a world map, and I know it's all on our technology, but I think, to me, there's something very helpful about that physical experience. And I had a groundbreaking experience with a student a couple of years ago in this library, because our discussion about her science project led to a discussion about the fact that the world is round and not flat. And it was huge. It was enormous. We spent a good solid 45 minutes talking about the shape of our planet and how it relates to the galaxy. And that, I mean, I remember that experience as like a 10-year-old, you know, like, and this was brand new. And if the globe hadn't been here in this library, I don't think we would have had that same discussion. And to me, I think that awareness is really essential to get either locally or globally engaged. So there's a physical.
It is, well, let me open it up for any thoughts or discussion points from, to keep it either going or elaborate.
Well, I love everything you guys said, and the empowerment piece, the agency piece. I really liked, Ziad, your point about the thing that connects us to the rest of the globe is you said microplastics and the services that we get from the environment. I mean, we share that with the rest of the world, so I can see it as sort of a natural connection. But then I got to thinking, as you were talking about empowerment and agency and so forth, I was thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. Maybe I should stop assuming that a connection to the rest of the world is important and really be explicit about why. Why do we care? Why did we put that in our end statement? I was there. I put it in there.
Consciously.
I mean, I was born in Mexico. I travel all over the world, so I sort of naturally think it's important, but I don't know that I've ever stopped to think, wait a minute, what exactly is the importance of making it clear for me and for our students why it's important to have any sort of awareness of the rest of the world if we're struggling with things like empowerment and agency locally. So I don't know. Any help me out on that one.
Well, I mean, I think our great gifts as humans is our ability to sort of socially organize. I think there's an importance in establishing a sense of individuality, but I think it's in the way we engage with the world that we create context for our lives. And I think that, the crisis that we're looking at is sort of like a widespread ecological level, is that this disconnect that people feel between themselves and the natural world. It's this that's outside of themselves. The situations that are happening over in Africa or Asia or whatever, it's away, it's not connected. And, I think, and I suspect the rest of the panel will probably agree that, I think it's that sense of mutuality that's really important. This we can engage in the world as as Martin Buber says, I, it, or I, thou. And if it's I, thou, then it implies a certain reciprocity between ourselves and the rest of the world versus an education that is just concerned with ourselves as a distinct entity.
Okay.
I'd like to work off of that. I think one of the biggest problems we have in the world is that we have a lack of empathy. And the lack of empathy comes from not understanding, and we don't have enough education about certain topics. And I think it's, what am I trying to say here? I think in order to care about other people, you have to first look at your own problems and then learn how to make connections and see that there's a lot of similar things going on all the way in Africa or in Asia or everywhere. And to see that if you can solve certain problems, you can solve bigger problems, and you can work with other countries to solve global problems. And it's just realizing that everything is really connected, which is not something that I fully realized until I was, I'm still realizing it. We all are.
Same here. I'm in.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Yeah, that never goes away. Hopefully, it never goes away.
Yeah. And it's realizing that, like, the world is something bigger than ourselves. And I think sometimes we get stuck in the fact that either it's too late to fix anything or that we have all the time in the world, which we have, neither is true. And we know that global warming is true. And when you first said the difference between awareness and taking action, the first thing that came to mind was knowing that our world is turning into a greenhouse and actually setting up compost in the lunchroom. And it's carrying, I still see people throwing recycling in the garbage. And it's carrying enough to take the time to walk all the way over to the recycling bin if it's farther away. And just a little side note, I've been learning that leadership isn't always speaking in front of a crowd or holding assemblies, but that it can be as small as picking up trash or making people smile. And I think it's learning that the best thing we can do is be our best selves. So to care enough to be our best selves, I think that's, I don't know how to do that, but I think to help inspire other people to want to do that.
Find a lot of people spending a lot of time on the same subject, for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's working.
Yeah. Zaid, I want to make sure I don't leave you out. Anything?
Okay. What I want to add is like people generally give higher priority or higher attention to things that they immediately feel or things that immediately affect their lives or things that they have higher visibility, higher visible impact. Well, for example, when there's an epidemic outbreak, whether it's Ebola, Zika, or anything, everybody globally is aware and then is engaged, and people start to get worried because it affects their health. But if you tell them that if you lose, I don't know, mangrove forest or cedars and then in 20 years later, you will have problems, they don't really care. But with Zika, with Ebola, with any other disease, it's direct. So this is how most of the people react. And the thing is, if we manage to change this by just linking the blocks that, okay, the immediate impact, okay, is there, but the problem is we really have to have an action plan and we really have to be globally engaged to stop or reduce the impact of things that will happen in 20 years because we have more time to act rather than more time to wait. So it's actually changed the waiting time into an action time.
Also,
Oh, yeah, I was just going to piggyback up a little bit off of what Tatum was saying around it's an action versus just an awareness. And I think that that's a lot of what the national or the International Peace Jam organization values. And I'm not sure if any of you are aware of the 1 billion Simple Acts of Peace campaign that's going on globally. But it has to do with very small immediate action steps. And so, for example, a lot of our Peace Jam students last year, at the end of last year, realized that there was a very big water crisis. And so it had a lot to do with just taking one action, one very small action, whether it be to leave your phone set aside for 15 minutes, and every 5 minutes was enough water to give one bottle of water to somebody else in another country. And
It was a very cool program.
yeah, it was an amazing program. And a lot of our students, that's very tangible for them because their screen time is so much that to leave their phone down for 5 minutes is a lot. But it's just that 5 minutes that allows that to happen. And there are so many other wonderful projects that are happening that students find the passion for. And not just students, but adults and just everyone in the world find a passion for promoting peace, for promoting environmental sustainability. And it's just really powerful.
Michael?
I think for me, it's what I'm constantly hearing from and interpreting from what everybody is saying, from what Zaid, is that Zayed? Ziad, thank you, I'm sorry. From him, from him talking about people worrying about, illness instead of worrying about what's going to happen, a few years down the line with the environment, to Tatum talking about leadership, to you talking about, the small little acts. For me, what I'm hearing is, that shift or that change in culture. And I think where I come from with thinking about being aware or being engaged or acting is that change in culture. And we are talking about, that transition phase for youth, going from high school or going to college or going from whatever educational environment that they're in to the next step. And I think it should start from a change in culture. I watched this YouTube video of this young boy, 14 years old, Native American. I think he was from the Navajo tribe, and he spoke to the UN. And this is like his 10th time speaking to the UN about climate change and about them signing the treaty to finally get in motion around fixing our problems in our atmosphere and our climate. And I was blown away. I was touched, because this was a 14-year-old young boy who was talking about, my generation is going to suffer from what we've been doing to the planet. And for me, that it all speaks to a change in culture. And if we can empower youth, that's a change in culture. If we can give them a platform, and like you said, I really appreciated when you said leadership is not just about, presentations or speaking out. Leadership is also about the small things. Well, also leadership for me also is having a place where we can all be together and learn together and raise our awareness and get educated. And adults have that, but as of right now, I don't see environments or contexts for youth to get together and feel empowered and talk about engaging in their communities locally or globally.
Is that a piece of the PCM mission to get that
Yes,
locally?
it is. That being said, and for better or worse, what comes to mind are some of the challenges with that, because one of the things that Mrs. Mason and I have struggled with the last several years is the fact that we see them once a week for approximately 45 minutes after school, which is also when they have their only opportunity to get extra help from teachers, unless they're here before 8 in the morning, which nobody, including many of our teachers, really want to be doing that, rightly so. So from 3 to 4, that's a hot time for getting access to some of those other resources, for sports, to bring their younger siblings home, to do their own chores, to go to their second job. So when it's not built into our regular schedule to have that space to engage in a discussion that would initiate some of this passion and interest. And obviously in the classrooms that is happening, but it has to then be built into the curriculum, and it's not designated specifically for that purpose as a safe space to get engaged globally or locally for that matter. And so I think, again, that culture, if that can be infiltrated throughout our classrooms, that would be very meaningful.
Well, not just the classrooms, but in our community.
Right.
Like our overall community.
Right.
I'm plugging right now, but
Do it shamelessly.
So the Multicultural Youth Program, we are hosting and sponsoring a youth leadership conference that was in the past hosted and sponsored by the GET grant, which is the Youth in Transition grant. And unfortunately, the money is shrinking around that grant. But as a program, there were a plethora of youth who were asking for this to happen again, and we were like, okay, we can't ignore this request. We can't ignore the fact that we have hundreds of youth saying, can we do this again? Can this happen again in our community? So we are hosting and sponsoring a youth leadership conference, and it happens May 7th, and we're inviting youth from all different school districts in the Chittenden County, and even outside of the Chittenden County as well, and we have a youth leadership committee composed of different youth. I think we have one youth from the Peace Jam.
And Nafisa, Nafisa was, yeah.
Who is on this committee, and they're the ones talking and choosing the workshops and the topics that they think youth should learn about and become more aware of. And so this is not coming from adults. This is coming from, young adults and youth. So I think that's one place to start, and that's one place to, start to transition into a culture of, providing opportunity for young people to actually have a voice and to feel empowered, like you so eloquently put.
I think it's the word opportunity.
Yep.
I think that there are many avenues that we can take to get there, but it's setting up the opportunities for the students and for everyone to be able to be aware and engaged.
And I think the challenge, as you said, is how do we find ways that we embed it into the curriculum? So it's not like, oh, this is Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, this is time for global engagement, but it's actually looking at each of the lenses of the academic disciplines. They each, if approached in the right way, really can be catalytic to understanding ideas of global engagement. I mean, a literature class where you're, reading the poetry of June Jordan. I mean, it's like you're looking at issues around voice and culture, but you're also looking at these ways of, how is voice claimed in a powerful way? How is this artist using their voice to offer a really eloquent critique of institutional power structures that, marginalize individuals? I mean, I think, looking at issues around biology and ecology, I mean, there's so much going on around global climate change and things like that, that there's these larger global themes can embed themselves into the curriculum. And I think it's important, that we see that relationship between what we're doing in the classroom and what's happening outside of the classroom. There's that great John Dewey quote that I quote all the time and shamelessly, is that, education is not preparation for life. Education is life. And so I think that the curriculum itself can be a vehicle to engage the larger issues.
That's nice, man. Because then it's not like the extracurricular project that we're trying to get the club time for, which is also great and super cool.
Yeah, thanks.
And probably and probably insufficient. I mean, like you said, and if the trend seems to be toward integration of the disciplines, right? So we have teams, right? We heard some great presentations tonight from teams where the math teacher is working on the cooking teacher is working on the cultural piece is working on it, right? So I mean, interconnectedness is a theme that comes back over and over again, which strikes me that you guys mentioned. Connecting this ecosystems, the way, understanding the way that we impact the rest of the world impacts us, kind of gives a sense of sort of the opposite of isolation, connectedness, which also gives a sense of meaning, like why are we here, what's the purpose of being around, which makes me think that maybe that's why global engagement is important to feel, and if we can embed it into the curriculum and without blowing the whole thing up, right, because I think there's probably some maybe not terribly difficult or labor-intensive ways of embedding some of this stuff in there. That'd go a long way toward getting us to the ends through our curriculum and extracurricular stuff.
Without it actually being something else.
Right,
It
right.
is part and parcel of the entire package as it's being presented.
Yeah, it's not packing another thing into your 40-minute lecture. It's discussion or whatever, but yeah.
I'd make the suggestion that, good education it's about building connections. I mean, I think that's what an educated person does, is they're able to understand how they intersect with their community and with their society, so.
Yeah.
That's interesting you bring that up, Matt, because one of the very clear issues we heard during the career forum that we did was employers want kids who can work with others, can communicate, can problem solve. And it wasn't about being able to do specifically this, that, or the other thing. I can train you to do that. But if you can't get involved with your neighbors, you're going to fail.
But to see themselves as a part of the whole picture, like that their small piece of that job was fulfilling something larger than themselves, so that they could see themselves connected to the bigger issues too, which was huge.
Interesting. Anybody have anything right out? So let me just start with what I think, if I tried to consolidate everything I just heard. I tried to break it down into again, I'm real simple when it comes right down to it.
That's what we love about you.
And it makes life so much easier. Expectations go way down in a hurry. But I think what I'm hearing is you need a cause for action, the opportunity you mentioned. You need to be able to build passion. You need to show passion in the things that you do. I'm going to say probably locally, and I'll get back to that in a second. Got to be able to show action, that you're actually willing to take that passion and do something with it. Being passionate and doing it nothing, you might as well sit on a couch. So you got to have an action with the passion. So if you take something, a local action, you build passion in a kid, in a group of students, they show action, they go out and they do something locally. Is that enough to generate over time the passion that you can assume that they're going to get involved later as adults in bigger issues? Something that's not necessarily just local? I guess what I'm getting to is Julian's statement about why did we bother putting the global in there? If you can show it locally and you can get kids passionate and they see that they have the ability to do something here and today and they can make changes, is that enough to get them later to be able to say, shit, if I can do that locally, I can do anything. I need to deal with something with the microplastics. I want to do something on a broader scale. Do we really need the globally engaged piece, or do we focus on the locally engaged and get that passion up and show that our kids are going to get involved in things? Is that enough? Zaid? Yeah, sorry, you guys can't see. He was ready.
So, enough to get the first step is actually, yes, awareness and then locally engaged. But to get them more motivated and engaged, you always have to use the global perspective, because you're showing them the bigger picture with the global perspective and how it's affecting everywhere and how they can be linked with other people. So you're creating a network of people, and then those young professionals or young leaders or whatever, you invite them to have ideas, because and we always experience this actually when we try to deal with little kids even, and they always have, because they have this vivid imagination, they can come up with innovative solutions that we as experts, senior thinkers, directors, we don't even think of it, because we are bounded by the knowledge we have and by the technical things. But if we start with them at an early age, sorry if I'm going a little bit off topic, but even if we get them a little bit locally aware or engaged, and then we give them a little bit the freedom, and we see, but let's also give them the global perspective at the same time, because their imagination and the way they think and everything can help a lot. And it differs between age, classes, and everything, and level of education. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, I'm not going to quote it exactly because I'm going to get it wrong, but there's a great T.S. Eliot quote. He says something to the effect of, we shall never cease from exploration until we, I'm killing the quote, but the idea that we can only understand our own home by stepping outside of it and getting the perspective. And so that there's this reciprocity between the global and the local. I think we can only really truly understand where we are now by taking on that global perspective. And so I think there's a really dynamic interplay, that happens. And certainly, in my time as an educator, I think opportunities I've had to travel with students, and it doesn't even need to necessarily be to a far off destination, although that certainly is catalytic to all kinds of epiphanies. But even just like a trip to an urban environment for kids in, rural Virgins, taking them to New York City. I mean, that's enough to suddenly be able to look at their town in a completely different way. So again, I think the global and the local, they're really complementary to one another.
So global doesn't have to necessarily be international, something very different than where you are. Because I had originally the global piece being, I got to go to Italy or Africa or, you know, Southeast Asia, but that's right. I mean, well, New York City might be close to foreign, but for some of us anyway.
We have a perfect example of global engagement happening locally next week, where we have about 65 CVU ninth graders coming to our school, and they're going to meet with some of our new American high school students and hear their stories. And it's a part of an integrated unit that they do in ninth grade around culture and community. So they're getting global engagement from our students that have these diverse backgrounds. And our students are also, I loved what you said about authors of their own life. You know, they're getting an opportunity to talk about that and author their stories with others.
That's good.
Steve, you mind?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah, we let her go first last time.
I was literally just thinking about the fact that, you know, we have so much opportunity right here for global engagement and for global awareness raising, just with our population and our community. And I think we should use the resources that we have at our disposal. And like you said, global doesn't mean you have to like go internationally. Speaking from experience, I'm from New York City, and coming out here, yeah, that was
this is foreign too.
It's a global experience. So.
Nice. Melissa?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on, again, the conferences that we're able to take our students to. They're in Connecticut, but it is a huge variety of the global population. I'm talking, we had the Dalai Lama at one of the conferences. Right.
Shirin Ebadi
from Iran. We've seen Oscar Arias from Costa Rica, and they've all come and spoken at this wonderful conference that students have a chance to be a part of, and then take the next couple of days to go through workshops and really build on projects that are inspiring to them that they've heard. And so it doesn't have to be outside of the United States borders.
Speaking of opportunity, again, that conference is not happening this year.
No.
The University of Connecticut, I guess, kind of needed a break, and they are waiting into the fall, which means that we don't have that conference to go to with our Peace Jam group. And it's so one of the things that I could certainly use is some kind of easily accessible database of all of these different events. I mean, you mentioned May 7th. Where is that on a calendar that I can find quickly and easily, you know? And I mean, and that goes across the board for things happening in the school, in Winooski, in the greater Chittenden area and beyond. So that's one thing. The other piece is in terms of what can happen inside of this school. One of my most exciting learning experiences of the last couple of weeks was I with Nafisa, nonetheless, she had a project where she wanted to display some of the cultural clothing that she's exploring, and some cooking. So she asked me to be her model, and it was the first time I ever wore a hijab. And she put me in a Somali dress that she had made, and tied a hijab around my head, and I walked around the school for the morning that way. Amazing, as a learning experience for me. And to think that I've been here for 4 years and it hasn't happened yet is actually kind of a problem. I think it should have happened much sooner. I was thankful for the opportunity. She invited me to do that. But I think that kind of experience and what's happening with the CVU students coming here is just as important.
Well, you know, all these are examples of exercises in perspective taking. You know, Virgins to New York to Virgins, putting on the hijab, CBU students coming to talk to new Americans. And perspective taking has been kind of a theme in these conversations that has come up. You know, if you're going to collaborate on a team, if you're career ready, part of being able to collaborate with someone who sees things differently than you is to be able to take that perspective for a minute and figure out where and why it is they're coming from there, you know? And if you're going to be able to see the way that things are interconnected, it's probably helpful to be able to take the perspective of someone in a different place, rural, urban, English speaking, non-English speaking, dominant culture, non-dominant culture, and so on and so forth, which also seems like something that could be used in the curriculum. That wouldn't be that hard. I mean, in a literature class or a social studies type class, coming up with the way that whatever our history or whatever the main story is might look like from a minor character. Might look very different. What does Jack and the Beanstalk look from the Giants' perspective? You know what I mean? Who's this punk coming up to steal my stuff? I worked hard for this stuff, and this little guy's taking my stuff, and on top of that, he's ruining my castle. That's perspective taking, right? I mean, that's probably a valuable piece.
Embedded, as you mentioned before, right?
Exactly,
Right, embedded, so it's in the fabric of what it is that you do. So,
yeah,
interesting.
We're
Actually, Tori's been no.
I have been quiet.
Go ahead.
But perspective taking is something that social thinking in the elementary school is teaching perspective taking.
Right.
From a very clear, you have thoughts, I have files in my head about you, you have files in your head about me, and how do we do that dance socially around building perspective from a really early age of just seeing and hearing the people around you? And then how do we expand it out to even broader perspectives, like being able to have a perspective on your own town because you've left, and being able to make connections. And sometimes it certainly coming from the South, like leaving the South, only then could I truly look back and see it for what it was and be able to appreciate it differently versus being immersed in it. So you need that sort of getting out and looking back and continuing to expand the perspective of multiple things, not just of each other, but of yourself and where you come from, and then what's the impact you have on other people and how that ripples out.
Melissa? Yeah.
Now, let's see if I can remember my thought.
Sorry.
Oh, yes. In one of our conversations that we had recently with our students, we were talking about the difference between beliefs and facts. And your belief is very different from my belief, and neither is fact. And it's that idea of perspective and really being able to see. A conversation that we had with one of those students was, around this film actually that we're going to see this coming Friday called Almost Friends, and it's about a Palestinian-Israeli conflict is supposed to divide these two young ladies, but actually winds up bringing them together as friends. We hope.
yet.
Yeah,
We'll
we haven't
find out
seen
in the film.
But anyway, the conversation really was about this, and then the student brought up the fact that if somebody comes into my home and takes my things, they're in the wrong. And it was an interesting conversation because it really is all about perspective and belief. And what happens if that person actually owned the land before you? Whose is it really? And so it was just really an interesting conversation. And these are the types of conversations that we need to provide the students the opportunities to have.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. I think, well, the thing, before we started the conversation, you started it off as being college ready, being career ready. And I think I would like to, be intentional and raise awareness around the fact that not all of the students are going to go to college after high school. And that's not the reality for actually the majority of the students. So being able to have this right now, at a young age, from elementary school to middle school to high school, embedded in the curriculum, so they can start learning this stuff already. Because higher education does allow people to expand their horizons. But if you already having it done, in middle school and high school, then you already having some doors open to you. Your perspectives are already growing before you even have to think about going to college, or if you're not going to college.
Right.
Well, I can tell you that in higher ed we struggle with this perspective taking thing. Like we right now we're trying to figure out how to embed perspective taking into our higher ed curriculum. Because we feel like our students aren't doing it well enough. So if we could start it from, like you said, the GXs are K-12, right, or pre-K-12.
Come to JFK.
Come to JFK.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're doing some of that stuff. That'd be hugely valuable for when they get to college. And if you're not going to college, if you have that skill, that's a huge advantage.
Right. Yeah, the whole idea with the whole thing, Mike, just from a perspective, at least my perspective, is that when they leave the doors, whatever it is they're going to do, they stand a good chance of being successful.
Yeah.
College, major college, junior college, work, travel, you know, whatever it is, they have the tools to be successful at it.
Oh.
I think it's an obligation of us as educators and of the community to think of the global engagement as just what it is, global, and not in terms of borders, but also in terms of the curriculum that we're teaching. So I'm talking to be globally engaged. We're talking about financial awareness, social awareness, environmental awareness, and so it really, and this comes from a place where I was just having a conversation about one of our graduate progressions and our GPs that are right below our GXs, and we were talking about what our students need to be financially ready when they leave high school. And one of the conversations that came up was, do our students really need to know about risk and investment when leaving high school? Of course, because in order to put any money anywhere, you're having some risk and you're investing some money and investing time and effort and energy too. And so that conversation really should be happening to make our students globally engaged and aware.
Wow. I hope you took good notes, boss, because this one's going to be a fun one to interpret.
So one last thought based on what you just said, which is that, you know, that financial literacy piece is pretty interesting, especially if you connect it to the interconnectedness and the sort of globalized economic systems and how the T-shirt that started with the cotton somewhere else ended up in the States and then got bought and ended up sold in Kenya before it got back on the boat and went, you know what I mean? Like
I just had a conversation with my grandma about where avocados come from.
Mexico, always Mexico.
On there, it was like,
According to this,
you know,
that's
product
commercial.
product of Mexico. And my grandma's like, you can't grow those in Vermont, you know, but it's just like,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
So I remember the TSLA quote, and I'm not doing it to be pedantic, because I think implied in it is something that's really important to this. It's, we shall never cease from exploration, and in the end we will arrive at the place where we started and know the place for the first time.
That's what you're saying.
I think that idea of exploration is the key. You know, that it's like that you see your education as an opportunity to explore, you know, to explore the internal landscape, but also to be exploring the world.
Being given the opportunity to do that and some level of guidance.
Yeah. To be literate in your own experience, you need to get out of it.
Can we quote you on that?
It's, yes, you should. Yeah, absolutely. TM.
Yeah. All right. Anybody got any final? This has been as enlightening as the others, and I had no idea what to expect starting in. Zaid, so many thanks for either staying up or getting up and joining us. I would have had to take 2 naps. Stayed up. Wow. Thank you very much. Your insight is going to help us as we go down the road here and what we're doing in the school. So greatly appreciated. To Michael and Matt, thank you very much. You guys are going to be here anyways. I know where you are. But to have you guys all take the time to come and join us and share your thoughts is appreciated. Just to give you an idea of where we go from here and where we've been with the other forums that we've done. With the College Ready Forum, we had the same kind of a forum. Sean went out, took the what does it mean to be college ready thought and came back to us with an interpretation. This is what I think it means. And these are how I think we can measure it. Career ready, same thing. This is what I think it means, and this is how I think we can measure it. So what he'll go off and do now is try to consolidate what we just heard, come back to us with this is what I think you're looking for, and this is how I think we're going to measure it. And then we're very early in the process, but in a year or two, we're going to be looking for those measurements. What are the measurements and what do they look like? How is that manifesting itself? And we're going to rate, part of his evaluation will be how the entire district is doing on that one of those pieces, along with a lot of other components, but that's one of the pieces of how we evaluate how we're doing as a board. So that's kind of how we wrap the whole thing back around into.
Well, I think I'm in good shape if I can just have Tatum and other students come and talk about it. I mean,
Right.
if that isn't proficient with distinction, I don't know what is.
Absolutely. You're,
I know, with the question of what does it look like?
Yeah.
thank you, Zaid.
All right, good night.
Good morning.
Sorry.
Bye.
Thank you.
Can't help it.
You too.
Yes.
Have a nice day, good evening, good night, whatever. That's 3, I think it's 3 in the morning there.
All right.
Poor man. Yeah.
So again, thank you
Well,
very
thank
much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
If we,
Can we take a break?
if we have any, we'll pass out. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
take a quick break here while
Okay.
we reorganize and reshuffle and,
Shift our chairs
and we'll
back
get,
over.
yeah, if you would.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Because she was sick.
We are now back. The little red blinky thing is on.
No.
I read
Actually,
All
that a
right,
beard keeps
so
you healthy because you
we-
can have more.
Ryan stays healthy, although he got the puking virus last
Back and
So
ready.
bad, so bad, he goes, that's my sickness. Hey, Sandy's got my sickness.
All right,
I'm
so
like,
we're
"Oh, so now
gonna
it's your
now
sickness."
move to, I'm trying to do this gradually.
Back in session.
Yeah.
Look at that machine, man. What is that, an iPad?
Yes. Yeah, we can get into that later.
Oh, there's a story behind it.
There is a story behind it. I got to figure out how to use
I
it.
think you're supposed to use a pencil.
It's his stylus.
Okay, so we're going to now move to item 7. Treatment of policy is treatment of staff and our monitoring report for the month. So I will invite any discussion. Actually, I'll start with you, Sean. Any changes from the last one? Anything?
Right, so this is the second time doing 2.2 treatment of staff, and in reviewing it, there was very little that I put in for changes. Mostly because those systems that we use to measure compliance and that the rules for staff and effective handling of grievances and performance standards, all of those things, none of them have changed significantly. The one question that I did have from the board, for the board, would be in section 5 and violating any provisions of any negotiated agreement, whether or not you would like to see more tangible evidence. We do track our formal grievances and our informal grievances on an annual basis and keep them over time. So that was the only place where I was just wanted to ask you if you would like that information included.
And it is something you already track.
Yes,
It is, so you have the data.
I will have the past 2 years since I've been here. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't say we'll have a lot of it after that. We might have a couple of years, but.
Right. So the policy piece, though, it is, you will not, as all of these are, violate any provisions of any negotiated contract.
Mm-hmm.
Is, by its very nature, a grievance a violation of the contract in and of itself?
Why?
I would argue that it is just that. It is a grievance against something that is against something in a contract.
It was a claim.
It is a claim,
It's a claim,
exactly,
right.
right. So from a data perspective, if we were to see the number of grievances go up from last year, does that necessarily mean that it's a bad thing, or that there is something else in the background going on, that the outcome of the grievance
Yeah.
being in favor of the grievant? Is that the data that we would?
Are you sure you're not getting into the means? Because a lot of the grievances would be not even related to, I mean, give an example of a grievance.
Well, I'm asking,
grievance
I was
against-
asking the question to see if the board wanted more specific data as evidence.
Like how much,
And-
how many?
Yeah, and, I know it's important for me to keep track of that and look at it year to year to see if there's a shift in that. I think, to your question, you wouldn't say that there'd been a violation of the negotiated agreement unless the agreement at some level won in the process.
Right.
Right? So what I hear you saying is maybe that's the point at which the report would be.
So what I'm trying to think about is broader than last year.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about the data points. Well, let me get right to my point. We changed superintendents because this one is good, and we don't want him to leave. We changed superintendents, we changed boards. We start getting data on this that shows a rise in grievances brought forward
Yeah.
and won.
Right.
Does that necessarily go back to, is that data enough to go back in to say that this is not being done well enough and it needs to be fixed?
I mean, I think you're right that it would be interesting to see if those data points changed year to year. And I would hesitate to give an interpretation before we talk too much about it, because it could mean a lot of things. It could mean climate's getting kind of crappy, you know, or it could mean we agreed in the last negotiation that in order to keep things nice and tidy, we were going to look more closely at the details and, you know, fine tune and see what happened. So I think you're right that it would be good to see if there are changes, and then if there are big changes, then figure it, you know, have the discussion about if that has policy implications.
Because that's, I think, the power of what we're doing here is that we can see it over time. Do you take action on it? Maybe.
Maybe.
Do you have the detail behind it? I think grievances going to the, at some level, going to the grievant and saying, you were right, you were unfairly treated against the provisions of the contract. We have to look at the contract, it's our contract.
Right.
Is the contract something that we can actually deal with? Is the change that we're seeing due to a change in the treatment of staff, which is what we're after?
Right.
I think it would get
Right.
at it.
Right.
But I don't think just purely the number of grievances is the data point to look at. Maybe the number of grievances filed and in association with the number of those that go in favor of the agreement.
No.
Maybe that would be the data point, because I think over time, if you get a change that moves to the treatment of the staff being much poorer, you're gonna see it in that data.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
And we're gonna hear it on the street, we're gonna hear it in the hallways, we're gonna hear it at the basketball game, we're gonna hear it all over the place.
Yep.
But this data, if it's kept, now, let me ask you the next question. Is there a way to, is this a data point that is not necessarily just coming from your data, your file drawer, your desk? Is this available to be looked at from some other perspective? I'm going back to.
I would assume that WEA would be keeping their own records, but I have not compared ours to theirs. I've never asked them to share theirs.
I'm going to the point of an investigation. If I want to go and look at this data,
Right.
I can look at yours.
Oh, an inspection?
But it's a data
You want to
point.
direct inspect
I
it?
need a direct inspection.
Yeah.
I need to then go and say, how do I prove this?
Right.
How do I know?
Right.
I know you wouldn't. You could be cooking the books.
Right.
And I'm looking at your data. I can't necessarily take only that. Is there a way to cross-section that with the WEA data to say that you guys agree at the end of the year, we're done the school year, here's what we have for data, this is our data point, we agree that we've had X number and Y number have been gone, and then you've got a check and a balance.
A reconciliation of sorts.
You can't
End
go
of
with
year
just
balance.
one data point, can't make a straight line with it.
Right,
So
right.
Grievance control.
I think that ultimately ends up being, and I think it's worth sitting down with the WEA and saying, you know, was this year a good year, a bad year, and what can we do differently?
You know, it'd be an interesting trust building exercise and sort of checkpoint along the way that could even be useful for negotiations, you know, in a mutually beneficial way over time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Which is that reciprocity of asking,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
how
and
is it from your
transparency.
perspective, your
Mhm.
perspective taking, right? Being
Ah.
able to build communication and community around perspective taking.
Keeps coming back.
It does, perspective, I mean, what, what are we without
everything.
perspective?
That's right.
Yep. All right.
So I can put something together when that comes back for next month for
Okay.
approval.
All right.
And take a shot at that.
And again, it's a
what you
first.
just discussed.
First data point, right?
Yeah.
It is, and I think if you can go backwards a year just to get again, a first data point to look at, an interim one as we go through, that I think the checkpoint really ends up being the end of the year, close it out. What did we do? here's our data. Because if you're reporting when you do this one in October and it's on last year's data, it doesn't really matter. It's,
Right.
you know, if it's something that's a problem, we start hearing it in a grocery store, we start hearing it in a gym, we bring it back, right? It's our thing that we can bring it back next month if we sense there's a problem. And I can bring it back the month after. Is it getting better? Is it getting better? We can go direct inspect it.
Okay.
All right. Anything else in here?
I don't know.
All right, so as we had agreed, then we will get the data, and then next time, we will accept it.
Okay.
Approve it.
Okay.
So that'll work.
Great.
Whoops, why do I keep coming back to this thing? Sorry, I'm getting wrapped up in my own technology here.
That's great. Fancy new piece of technology is
It-
always
it-
exciting.
It was given to me, so something I'm trying to get used to it. Okay. Next item was sent out, I believe, on Monday, and this is, again, our policy 4.1 on governing style. And so Jen, oops, did I? No, I'm here. Student report to the board, sorry.
right there.
Oh, sorry.
2.3.
You got your finance?
I'm all tied up in my data. All right, so, yeah, sorry. 7B is financial management questionnaire, and that was buried in here.
It
Yeah.
was, right at the bottom.
So it looks like this. Jog your memories. So,
Yes.
interesting thing about this is that it has been in statute since 2011. But many school districts did not seem to know about it. I never had it on our list of statutory, legislative, agency of ed rules checklist.
this.
And there was an email that came out from the director of the Vermont Superintendent Association in December saying, it appears from us checking around the state that many districts and supervisory unions are not doing this. So we are reminding you that you need to do this with your board. So had I known about it, then I would have made us get into compliance, or I would have reported us out of compliance if it had also coincided with one of our 2.3
Monitoring.
or 4, one of our financial executive limitations. So we are starting where we are. This is the first time that you're seeing this. And this financial management questionnaire was prepared by our finance manager, Rebecca Goulet, and reviewed by me.
All right.
So it has also been plugged into the annual agenda plan, which the board turns
great.
over every year, so now it will be a standing item.
Excellent.
to take care
Are
of.
there right and wrong answers to these questions?
There are some, yes.
If-
They would require some action if you,
Just curious.
yeah.
Yeah, I think this is in or out of compliance, and out of compliance comes with an action plan to get back in and a timeline to get back in. I did have one question, just for a reference point, and it was kind of an interesting one. Is it common practice for staff members to rotate responsibilities or cross-train periodically? Thinking of the limited staff that we have, is that even A, possible, and B, done to the point where we can feel comfortable that we've got all the activities covered?
So in talking about that and specific, related to financial management, so there is myself, I have an assistant, and then we have Diane, our accounts payable, accounts receivable clerk, and then we have a finance manager. So while we're not the biggest district in the world, we also don't have a ton of support for those functions, in addition to, supporting my work, supporting all the finance, the human resources, payroll, all those things. So I identified this as an area when I first got here that we needed to do some cross-training. So what we've taken on is human resource function and payroll in the first couple of years. And so pretty unbelievable to me when I first got here was that there was a single person in the organization that did payroll and no one else knew how to do it. And it was documented somewhere, but we needed to remedy that, and that's what we did straight away. Now we have 3 people who can do payroll by themselves. It's documented so that somebody could walk in and do it that has some of those prerequisite skills. And then we've moved that into human resource functions like Family Medical Leave Act, intake, new employee orientation when they come in, posting jobs, those types of things. And so I think we've made a lot of progress on that in the last couple of years.
Other questions are kind of funny. Do the financial accounting personnel take regular vacations?
So, interesting as it is, I have a cousin who works in a bank, and they are required when they take time off to take 2 weeks at a time to be able to uncover any kind of abnormalities that may be going on underneath.
You
That's, I
can't, you
think,
can't
what that
cover
is.
up something if you're gone for 2 weeks?
Over 2 weeks, it's gonna come out somehow.
Especially if you're cross-trained.
Yep,
Oh,
and somebody
that's
else looks into
interesting.
it, well, it apparently it gives time to,
Okay.
so that's, I think, what that is aimed at.
That
is
makes
you're-
sense.
You're not the only one doing it because nobody else has to do it, even if they're cross-trained. They don't do it because they don't have to.
Right. Huh, that's pretty cool.
Interesting perspective.
That's why I like, that's why I like taking vacations on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Let them know how much they miss me.
Yeah, I need to take some more vacations, I think.
No kidding.
One of the most important pieces of this, to give you even more comfort with this, is the audit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, and you've just gone through that and you had a really clean and healthy audit. And this is all related to that, and they come in and provide another set of controls around a lot of these questions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, good. That's actually really nice to see this, because it sort of means there's some systems that are automated to keep bad stuff from going down.
Yeah, to keep us healthy as an organization.
So we have to do, we have to review and approve this report once a year?
Yes.
Once a year?
Does it fit with one of your, it does fit with one of your
Yes.
executive limitations. If we embed it in there, does that will give you A, data, and B, a time to put them together? Does that make sense to line those
Yeah,
up?
if we
do it
lined
every
up
year?
the cycle, and if we got to the annual review of all those executive limitations,
Yeah,
yes.
and I think we're getting close to the
Yep.
point. I think the workload on you to get these returned over now has gone
Yes.
way down from the first pass.
Right.
So I think we're ready to start kicking them
Yep.
up next year. We're getting
Yep.
ready to next year's agenda, so we'll do that as we get there. Just gotta ease into that. It'll come. And we've got our own.
True.
We've got our own cross to bear, so don't, we can't get too comfortable.
Yes.
So I would accept a motion to accept the financial management questionnaire as detailed.
So moved.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of accepting? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Very good. Well, you gals made it for the student report.
How'd it go?
Awesome.
Well,
You can report on what you
Yeah,
just did. This is
exactly,
great. Good
exactly.
timing.
so I'll start off. As you all know, the Penguin Plunge was this last Saturday. October 6th. We had over 200 Winooski supporters, and over those 200, they raised over $10,000 to support the Special Olympics Vermont team. And over 60 plungers dived into the waters of Lake Champlain. If you would like to see the pictures, the website has plenty of great photos.
Wait a minute, let's clarify. I don't think everyone dove. I would like to, I was one of the people who dove in head first,
Okay,
but there were people who
Okay.
just walked in.
You too? Did you go? Were you part of the 60?
Excuse me? Excuse me?
What?
I feel offended.
Why?
Sounds like a challenge.
I think we should do it again just to make sure.
I saw that horse head above
With the
water
horse
the
head,
whole
too.
time.
A horse head? Wait,
into
what?
the
I'm going on the
water.
website
Yeah,
right
there are
now.
plenty of horse heads.
What?
So, Mike, Sean, and I did the penguin plunge. I won't say we dove into the water. I was trailing behind. I was the horsewoman.
Nice.
I was confused and lost, like a horse.
So,
so,
horses do when they go into cold water.
yeah, all the pictures on the website. They're also in a folder. If you're interested, you can email Matt Gonzalez. As for Peace Jam, we have Peace Jam updates after Julian had requested
you.
them last time.
Yeah.
Peace Jam, I talked with Libby Houghton, who was here earlier. Peace Jam is very internal at the moment, and because they have a lot of newer members, they're also setting up and rebuilding community for Peace Jam. And so right now they are planning their next international bake sale with even more international food. They're also making flags to correspond with the food that they're selling, so it's more informative as well. They're also just making those flags and matching them up with the foods is a very valuable learning experience for them. They're also learning about each other before talking about their culture's publicly, of course. And this weekend they'll be heading to the Urban Roots Film Festival to watch a film about two Syrian girls trying to befriend each other. One is I believe, a Jew, and one is Palestinian. There we go. And so it's the film is just kind of documentary of how that goes along, and so they'll be watching that this weekend.
That's what Mrs. Mason and Ms. Houghton were talking about in Global Engagement too.
Yeah.
They cite in the film.
Okay. So that's Peace Jam. On the 6th, also on the 6th, the same day as the Penguin Plunge, there was a winter ball / Valentine's dance held by the Student Council and happened right here in the school's gym. The turnout was immensely successful, and there were over 100 students coming into the dance to have fun. There was food, drinks, a DJ, and best of all, a really good mix of students. Going to the dance cost money, but it helped pay for the cost of the DJ and the decorations. But student council members and the Penguin Plungers got it for free, so it was nice for everybody. Music update, there's all states and performance, as I cited in my last report. There was 2 Winooski High School students performed at the Flynn with the Vermont Youth Orchestra alongside a massive statewide chorus of over 120 choral students from all over the state, which was really cool. And as for all states, Ki Nguyen, a bass singer, and I, a bass player, got into all states, and we will represent Winooski High School at the festival at MVU in May.
Nice.
As for prom updates, tomorrow we have a summer salad sale, which for those of you who don't know, it's basically we're selling treats like pasta salad, potato salad, taco salad, fruit salad, tomorrow from 11 to 12. So if you're in the area, bring them some money, grab a serving, and enjoy some good summer salad to help make you feel better in the cold winter. And there, for a National Trio Day, there's the Upward Bound group from Winooski students in the Upward Bound group of UVM, alongside BHS Upward Bound students, will represent UVM Upward Bound and their schools at the Sheridan on February 10 to 12, in which the Upward Bounds from all over New England come together. And since we are the hosts, we'll be kind of like special MCs, and they're just helping others and welcoming them to Vermont. Also for the Youth Leadership Institute, the annual Youth Leadership Institute conference that BHS and WHS students go to every year have a planning team, and this year there are 2 Winooski representatives rather than just 1, and so that's pretty good too.
Who are this?
Ennis Rosevich Jr. and also me, Jr. I don't know, man. All right.
Just keeps happening, right?
Keep showing up.
I'm just there.
Yeah. Okay, so the elementary has been participating in the Big Change Roundup, a fundraiser made to support the Vermont Children's Hospital at UVM. 11 staff members in the JFK volunteered to participate in a hair dyeing contest to get students excited to raise money. These staff members have their own labeled and decorated jar in the office, and anyone can put money in the jar of their choosing. Whichever teacher gets the most money in the jar wins or loses, depends on how you see it, and they must dye their hair a fun color. On February 19th,
Start walking in there.
On February 19th, there will be an all-school JFK assembly to announce the winner of the dyeing contest. So far, there's been $824 raised to support the hospital.
And when are they going to make the announcement?
February 19th. Sorry.
19th.
Yes.
Okay, so Friday.
Yes.
I think it's in the morning.
Okay. Okay.
And so far, it might change, but so far, the teacher with the most money right now is Courtney Bryan.
Kindergarten teacher.
Yeah. Yearbooks are still on sale until February 12th, so that's coming up. The yearbook committee is having a Valentine's fundraiser sale from the 8th to the 10th, and also on the 12th, not the 11th. They are selling chocolate roses, chocolate strawberries, stuffed animals, and they're hosting a raffle for a gift basket that includes a $25 gift card to Olive Garden, a giant box of chocolates, and a bouquet of roses. It's called the Dream Date. Or you could also buy it for yourself. That's my plan. Also, in order to bring in more excitement for the yearbooks, in the next high school community meeting, which is also on the 19th, Mrs. Bruce, the leader of the yearbook committee, she's setting up. She's going to host a guessing game of yearbook photos, which can include celebrity photos and teacher photos.
Oh, God.
Which is a good way to get some laughs in. Very enjoyable. There is another raffle happening to support the New York City trip, Miss Paquette's New York City trip. All the students going on the New York City trip are selling tickets for prizes donated from the local school businesses. Tickets are $1 for one ticket, $6.
$5 for 6.
$5 for 6 tickets. Sorry, where's that?
Come by.
Yeah, right here. Another super cool thing. Next Thursday, this was also mentioned in the last board meeting. Next Thursday, 3 middle school students are traveling to Montpelier with Suzanne Scaffelstad to advocate for after-school activities. These students, Yatrika Damala, Ekalu, and Dollarmu, will be going to Montpelier to meet with State Representative Bissonnette and to lobby for support for after-school programs. The second annual Celebrating Winooski's Talent is in the horizon. This event is a talent show.
Yes, get the guitar strings warmed up.
You do.
All right.
Working on my calluses.
Good for you.
Are you gonna participate?
I might. Yes, I might.
Cool. Mystery man.
That's right.
All right. Yeah.
Maybe
so,
that's why he's growing the beard.
Oh, good point.
Undercover.
Undercover.
How will you recognize me?
Yeah. So as you know, this event is a good way to show off all the super cool hidden talents and abilities in Winooski. Auditions are on March 7th and 8th at 3 p.m. and on the 12th at 12 a.m. The talent show...
12 a.m.?
12 p.m. Oh, I do that
12
a lot.
a.m. is midnight.
All right. Obviously, that's not happening. The talent show takes place on April 8th in the PAC, and we might be performing.
Really?
Yeah,
Maybe.
up in the air.
I'm thinking with everything I've heard over the last year, you'd almost have to get there.
Exactly.
I'm gonna guess percussion somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drum and bass.
Yeah,
That's all you need.
it'd be super cool. Also on the theme of music, the middle and high school orchestra, chorus, and band has a concert on March 17th. And for sports, tonight, as you guys know, was the last boys basketball home game. It's also the senior game. We commemorated our seniors. Both teams were called up, given flowers, and pictures were taken with their families. We won,
Nice.
which is super good. We,
Oh, yeah. It was
I don't want to brag, but we crushed them.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Where did we start you back?
Fairfax, BFA Fairfax.
yeah, it was
Well done. That
Is
was
this on
super
tape?
Yeah,
absolutely.
careful.
Yeah.
We
Filter.
kindly
Yeah,
crushed
yeah,
them.
cut that,
Yes.
With yeah, with love.
Dignity and
Oh, yeah.
And 3 pointers all over the place.
Just saying.
The last girls' home game and senior commemoration will be next Thursday. Baseball meetings are starting up, but they are very early meetings just to see how big the turnout is and whether or not a baseball team can happen this year. And also, the previous baseball coach has retired, so a new one will be seeked. Track meetings start in March, so you'll hear about that in March. Yeah, and then some sports dates. As mentioned previously, the last varsity boys game was today. They are currently 14-5. And JV also played tonight against Fairfax. The last JV home game is on the 11th against St. Albans Town. Starts at 3:30. The last game before playoffs for both JV and varsity is at Lake Region on the 12th. Starts at 5:30. JV and varsity girls have a game against Lake Region at Lake Region on the 11th. The varsity girls are currently 8-8. Their last home game before playoffs is on the 18th against Northfield, which starts at 6, senior night. And that's what we have.
Thank you. Rainbow, real quick, how are things going with the state board?
State board, I have my next meeting next Tuesday, so I will update by next meeting as to what's going on. We'll be meeting at Capitol Plaza, and our ETN will be there, so the recording will be up. And
Still enjoying it?
yeah,
Nice.
tons of
Great.
fun.
Awesome.
Thanks for the report.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, now the one I tried to jump the gun to earlier.
Okay.
We're down under governance processes to policy 4.1, governing style. After a couple of starts and stops, we have a finished product here, so I will turn over for comment. I think overall, well, I'll open it up for comment. This is our first pass at a board interpretation, so. Any,
No, it's not a sample. We're just looking at the interpretation pieces.
Interpretation in the data, and is there anything that, you know, we're, as I mentioned before, we're going to accept this one tonight. We're gonna continue to improve on our process as we go through time. But I wanted to make sure that we at least,
Let's just close this one up, guys.
yeah, I'm gonna.
I appreciate you guys working hard on this.
So the one thing that I will note, and I appreciate, Jen, is under 413 is board enforce upon itself whether discipline is needed to govern with excellence. Discipline will apply in matters of attendance, preparation, policy-making principles, respect for roles, ensuring the continuance of governance capability. All of that, I think we're doing a good job on, the respect for the roles, the policy-making. We've had some deep conversations about what it is we want to have. Ensuring the continuance of the governance capability with both our commitment to being here as well as commitment to the education as we go along. But I do want to point out, and I do respect and appreciate the partial compliance from a, you know.
Well, this is just working with yours and
Yep,
everyone
yep,
else's comments.
Yep,
from
that's fine,
before.
that's fine. But, you know, with respect to attendance and preparation for meetings, I think we can always do a little bit better. I'm gonna, you know, I'll leave it at that. It's definitely good. I think we can do better. I can. I'm gonna not have a problem with that. So we do have the schedule as we go down. Any other comments on this? We'll accept it here in a second. Okay, so we've got a schedule coming up for the others as we go forward. And they're on the Google Drive. I think I gave you that. So they're all set up and laid out. If you need those, Julian, there's one out there for you if you need to see where it is. So I would accept a motion to accept our interpretation of policy under 4.1 to accept. I will accept a motion to approve and accept policy 4.1.
So moved.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I have to focus.
Thank you for that.
No problem. No other discussion? All those in favor of accepting? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That, I think, is a big deal, getting that first one behind us and getting able to move on. And we got some, well, you know, but
Thank God for it.
the discussions that got us here, I think, were well worth setting the stage for the ones to come. And I appreciate that. It's not perfection, it's practice, all, so, great, thank you. So next item here, and again, for you guys, I think the rest of this is gonna be interesting, but probably redundant from what you guys do on a regular basis, just a couple of policies to do, so, again, appreciate.
Can I just ask the board a question about this? Because this policy governance is, we're still trying to figure it out.
Yep.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
No, please, we'll open up the floor, happy to.
So, how did you guys, when did you guys discuss the policy you guys just adopted? How did you guys go about doing that? Did you do it through like a Google Doc where you guys are all conversing through it? Did you sit down at board meetings and have this discussion? Because I don't see a lot of discussion about that policy, but you just approved it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you maybe, I don't know where the, I mean, how did you
We've
guys
discussed
sit
it.
So there's two different segments. One is setting it up originally, and this one is now interpreting whether we accept our interpretation, and we have used it to Google Doc. We've had it in 3 past meetings. So this is one that we've been using as our first pass to inspect our own work in how this works and how do we do that.
In coming up with the interpretation of the policy, so the policy had already been set.
Right.
Right, that was a long time
So it's
ago.
not, we didn't make a decision on whether, we didn't just approve a policy. We just approved our first pass at our interpretation of what that policy is so that we can begin to monitor our own progress.
So when you started policy governance 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Ish,
Yeah.
and this policy was set up. And now this is just you guys looking at this first one policy,
Yeah.
and how you guys interpret it, and how you guys feel that you guys should be doing this, enforcing this policy.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's monitoring our
Utilizing
own
this policy.
progress towards fulfilling our own policy.
And it also forces us to look at the policy itself and ask, is it getting to exactly what we think we need it to get to? do we need to restructure it? Do we need to reword it? Is there something we need to add? So we get a chance to do that. We're in the early stages. We've got a schedule now to continue a bunch of them as we go forward. Some of them are easy. We probably pick off some of the easier ones up front. Some of them are a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Reviewing policies always good, bad.
But you know, when we're reviewing a policy that the state mandates on us, does it cover all of the things that the state mandates us to look at? They wrote it, so it's probably pretty close. You know, we got a sample. The stuff for Sean, he's looking at what we want him to do, and we're looking at his interpretation. This is different. This is inspecting ourselves.
Right.
It's always harder to be critical about what you do and how you're doing it, because I'd love to say I'm doing it perfectly, but I can't say that. We've got to try to find a way to say, is there a way to make this better?
Yeah.
And so that's the hard part.
Yeah, and you probably couldn't see it, but Jen has been working for the past couple months on writing kind of a brief evaluation report, what Tori's calling an interpretation of each of the pieces of the policy that we were just looking at. So we were sort of looking at what she wrote and seeing if we'd agreed with it, and that's a couple months in.
A lot of stuff has happened over
Yeah,
months.
and it started out like just taking the whole policy in a sample monitoring, and Mike and I looking at it and me being like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. It was way too confusing. Like, so we've really put a lot of effort in just like the format of how we do it to what's the data we're gonna use for it. So we've had all those discussions.
And that's the part we missed.
Yeah, and so,
Yeah.
Which was
the other
long.
piece, the other piece though is after the first couple of times we looked at it, we said, you know what? We're ready for an education piece that takes us to a policy governance 201. So we invited Val back, and we had a 4-hour Saturday morning meeting on a couple of different topics, and one of them was how do we do our own monitoring reports? How do we do that? What do we look at? What lens do we use to look at it through? How do we do that? And so it's all in an effort to try to focus the work we do, what we're doing it, why we're doing it, and how we do it. And so, yeah. Any other?
Yeah, thanks for letting us in.
Yeah, by all means, anytime.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Good night. And I don't think you could have picked a more perfect meeting to get a broad spectrum of what there's a little bit different about what it is we're doing, so. Great. All right. The next item here is a budget cycle reflection. So,
Is that a joke?
well, yeah, you know, I think it was an interesting budget cycle reflection. All the way to what did we do, and is there anything we would do different next year, other than remove the shackles? But I think it was a good exercise this year in having that constraint and having to figure out what it is you'd work around. I think we did some good advocating, Julian. I think your voice was very well heard, both in your visit to Montpelier and one on a phone, I think.
Loud and proud in Winooski, that was.
Absolutely.
That was
And,
pretty
you know, they
serious.
even put a condition in there that says you're not gonna be penalized for, if you're under the average.
Under the average, that was
And
huge.
that was your biggest point.
Just a little late.
Just a little bit late, but, you know, if they do it next year.
Just a little late.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense, because then they're addressing the equity thing. I mean, that was really great. And that was one that you put in that last conversation that we had with the Senate and the House. That was really great.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate the advocacy there. But anything different we would do as we go through the cycle? We set a limit, we look at conditions.
Man, I tell you what, we built scenarios. You guys were super nimble and coming up with different possibilities based on different. I mean, I feel like I was really, really proactive budgeting, and we sort of followed like a principle and a value that we had of getting the most that we could for our district within the constraints that we had and within a couple scenarios. I mean, all those moving parts, you guys handled that like amazingly. That was really graceful.
And it was streamlined. I think
Yeah,
considering,
yeah.
because it was more streamlined than the prior year, which when we reflected, we wanted it kind of streamlined. And the fact that all these new balls kept being tossed at you all, it
Yeah.
still maintained a streamlined, efficient,
Yeah.
clear,
Yeah.
lots of options path that made it easy to deal with what was coming on us that was completely unexpected,
Yeah.
right, around these caps and numbers. So Well done.
I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was right, because that was your biggest beef
Yeah.
about the previous
Yeah.
year, was just
And
the
I
all
don't
the
like
And the difference was,
give and
was
back and forth.
great. Yeah,
Just put it on the line, this is what we can do, this is what you
Yeah.
wanna do, and this is what we can do.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think this reflection actually is yours too, from the workload on the other end of the, other end of the lens.
Absolutely.
Thoughts?
I think that I felt like the streamlined approach helped from our perspective too, because as nimble as I appreciate the comment about being nimble, but it was a lot of work behind
I bet, yeah.
behind the scenes. But
Yeah.
I think that the streamlining then also forced us to do a couple steps back that we did last year later. So we had to kind of tighten up our schedule, which worked fine. The challenges that Rebecca and I had was just that time frame, with negotiations, with starting, and for you guys too, and with the budget process, just
still
the
married.
uncertainty, and kept going on, and until it's closed, that's a piece that you're always working on, and it impacts other pieces that you're trying to work on. So
really does.
hopefully next year the legislature and will have their game a little tightened up like we did this year, and it'll be really smooth.
We'll be tossing curveballs.
So the
Maybe.
setting the initial boundary conditions is helpful, and at least giving you a starting point to try to hit. And what does that do as a starting point? Was
Yes.
it better to have a range? Would it be?
Well, I think it depends on the climate, right? I mean, the year before, I think you guys gave kind of a generous point to head for, and this year it was statutorily required, which is different, So I think it's helpful to have some sort of an aiming point.
When we do I think in October, I don't think it's in November, I think it's in October, we have a budget conditions discussion on what we're looking for going forward. Would multi-tier, I think the city uses it a little bit, is they put together a zero-based budget, and then one condition, and what would have to come out in the zero. Is that just work for us that would not be, to expect a zero growth is
I don't think
hitting
you
the
could without,
kids.
yeah, you'd have to make cuts because you have increases in pay,
Right.
Yeah.
everything's moving,
Yeah.
and the needs of children
So it would be an
changes.
exercise in futility for doing the exercise.
Well, I maybe even backing up another step before getting to what you just described is having the discussion about what do we know? So that includes the financial climate, the legislative landscape, that includes the agreements that we have, labor agreements that we have that we know, and then also the goals.
Right.
What are we working on and what do we need?
What you've already discussed.
Yeah.
Discovered as a leadership team and a faculty of here are the goals we have.
Right.
Here are the things that we feel like would help propel us into that.
But I think that would help also then to get to whether it's a number or a range, because we can say, okay, we know we're gonna have the same number of students or a little bit more, or a little bit less in front of us. We know we've got these labor obligations that equal this amount. It's gonna take us here. That's kind of where we're starting. And then if we wanna do X, Y, and Z,
Okay.
and still not knowing at that point what's the tax
The
implication,
CLA.
Yeah.
what the health is gonna, you're still forecasting a lot, but.
Okay. So there are things we can do in that prep meeting to set the boundary conditions and the discussions of where do we want to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the things from a board perspective too, it was great, all the advocacy, right, that you guys were doing with legislators, and that's a perfect role for a board. Maybe that advocacy could also be about education finance and funding, reform.
Yeah.
And talking about how do we start to build some systems at the state level that allow for more forward-thinking budget building,
Like
and
multiple
less
year, multi-year stuff,
uncertainty. you know, in the same month that you're building a budget and trying to get it adopted. And you know, a 2 or 3 month frame of from building it and to adopt or to vote.
Okay, so potentially the advocacy to get the CLA data, the everything else in November rather than late
Yeah.
December, early January.
Yes,
To help.
or
with
even
the-
thinking about really looking at finance, funding, the formula.
The formula itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be interesting to see though,
And-
it might be interesting for us as a board to take on like time to do that, to look at what's the research that's been done in some of the innovative ways of trying to fund education. What are the boundaries that we're held by with some of those timelines? Like, what's been done about thinking around this, of why is it set up the way that it is, and how would it best serve our communities and our education to think, maybe possibly think about it differently?
There's a training piece.
Huh?
There's a board training piece,
Yeah,
of
right
understanding
there.
the formula, which
Right,
is crazy
understanding the
complicated.
formula.
Right.
And where
And then
the
figuring
history
out
of
where
it,
the
like
holes
where
are,
did it
yeah.
come from? How
Yeah.
did it get to where it is today
Yeah.
that we bump up against? We don't get the numbers until, you know, right at last minute or past last minute.
Yeah.
Right.
So we do things about it. And what are some other ways of doing education funding?
And I
Yeah.
think that's at the heart of what we were fighting for this
Yeah.
year in our
Totally.
cause in Winooski, which is, you know, externally, there's all, you know, somebody comes in and does a report and says, wow, Vermont is so, they're one of the most equitable ed financing models in the country. You know, and Vermont
Yeah.
spends in the top 3 in the country, you know, so externally, everybody's looking at us and going, wow, look at this.
Yeah.
Yet we can clearly show there's some serious equity issues.
Yeah.
And,
Major
and,
equity
and
issues.
a big contributor to that is the formula.
Yeah.
Good. So we'll have
Some good work ahead of us.
a little
Yeah.
deeper discussion, but it's also when we bring our legislators in, that's another piece of that discussion as well.
And I think, I like the way that it sort of expands, you know, that as we are linking to our ownership, because we are also advocating to effectively look at how the money from our stakeholders, our ownership is being spent.
Yeah.
And in the ways that we're funding education, how education's funding is directly related to our community that pays taxes. So it's multiple beneficial in 2 ways. Us meeting our goals as an organization, but also linking the community and making sure it's the most innovative way of funding education
Totally.
for them. It's one of their angles.
Yeah. Yeah, the VSBA knows something about education funding?
Sure.
Would
Yeah.
they be good in some of that
pretty-
history that Troy was talking
And I
about?
heard that House and Senate had just done a study on, anyway, I think that there's
Well, they're-
probably a lot of like, you know, background for us to educate ourselves on.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the work that's already been done?
Yeah.
What's
Right.
been found out about some of these places that would actually benefit our tax possible, our ownership as well as certainly our ability to run a solid organization
Yeah.
that's equity-based.
Ta-da.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, good.
get that scheduled.
All right, discussion. Next, 2 policies, student conduct and discipline and non-English language background.
All right.
So if we take the first one first, student conduct and discipline. Looks like we've got the current one, and we also had a, did we have, we
That's
had
a
a
VSBA model.
model?
C11, yeah.
Okay. Your recommendation here?
Yeah, I mean, the model is, everything that's in the model is in our local policy.
I couldn't find much difference.
Right, there's very little, there's a few things that need cleaning up. So if we're looking at our policy, in that first paragraph, accepting the loco parentis.
Parentis.
I think it's supposed to be the Latin there, so I could, you know, we can clean that up. And then it's missing a period at the end there. So that's kind of a local statement that, you know, and many of your policies are there before the model language comes in. Down in definitions, still on our policy, there seems to be a footnote or a reference at the end of number 1, above, at the end of the word injury, bodily injury.
Mhm.
That doesn't seem to be cited anywhere, or
Kind
I
of a
can't
floater.
find the footnote, or,
Mhm.
Okay, because there's a 2 at the end of 3 as well.
yeah. Right, oh, okay, good, yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like they're
I had
one star.
a comment on, under student responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Last sentence, it says the signature signifies that the handbook has been reviewed by the parent or guardian. Do we have that on file?
No, and that has, I don't think that that's been included for a while, because a lot of the, while we send them home, they're also electronic, and that's how they get used for the most part during the year, but we don't require that everybody send that signature page back.
Okay.
They used to.
Should we strike it?
Well, I think that's a question, whether or not it's in the policy. If we want to keep it in the policy, then we would need to, yeah.
Right, and that, I guess, was the heart of my question is it?
The law doesn't say that you have to have that evidence. The law says that you have to
Make it
available.
Okay. So we wouldn't have a case if we, I mean, a signature is nice. Signature page is included in the student handbook. You can have it, but if you don't need it, then I think that those last 2 sentences may be, as long as we got proof that it was made available, is meeting the requirements to have somebody not be able to come back later and say, I didn't know.
Yep.
Whether you read it or not, that's like your terms and conditions when you buy a new something,
Mhm.
right? Show me the X box on the bottom.
Ignorance is not an excuse.
Yep.
There's a hanging S on page 2, first sentence, including expulsion for violations of the prohibition against knives, weapons, dangerous instruments that are not possessed at school, part of an educational program sponsored or sanctioned by the school.
Thank you.
So the one thing I was trying to read for when I was reading this, other than typos, was really thinking about equity
Yep.
around discipline.
Yep.
And making sure that we are not, at a policy level, promoting students who are touched by poverty, race, or disabilities.
Yep.
Having more,
A higher rate of suspension.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. And I couldn't read anything where it created that situation. And but I just wanted to speak to that, because I feel like that is one reason we wanted this policy to come up, is to make sure that from a policy level, there
Not
is
bias,
equity,
no
and there's
bias.
no right, and looking for bias, and I couldn't find where it was, that it would create that scenario, bias, or, in that policy, but I'm not an expert at it, but I just wanted to bring that to our awareness around
Yeah.
what this policy can do and cannot do for all students. And this is in some ways where it starts. So I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
we're being transparent about that.
Yeah, and Sean, remind me again, we talked about getting the data, but it was a little bit jumbled, and then there was not a huge end, so it was hard to read in the first place, or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and we still have to put that into the agenda plan to have a report out on that. And
That's
where we'll
right.
bring it all, but it'll be springtime.
Okay.
We just haven't plugged it in yet.
Right, so this is the policy, and then the report comes later, right, okay. So to your point, Tori, I think one of the things about suspensions and expulsions of those 3 populations you mentioned is, I think it's less evident at a policy level and more evident in just sort of, in the practice of.
Right.
And I think one of the recommendations of at least the kicked out document is to, minimize expulsions to the extent possible, especially without services in or outside the building.
Right.
Period, just to avoid that. And also backing up, because this is the last piece of a long story that starts, with behavior in a classroom, having like a coherent behavior management, setup, that's mean, so it's not really our piece. But one thing that does occur to me, for a policy piece that might be relevant there is something about restorative justice, and looking more toward restorative methods rather than punitive methods.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's a place for us to have an impact on policy.
I read, to your point, keeping kids in school, reading down through the procedures, though, it's a means, and it just seemed that the intent was to try to keep the student in school as long as they're not dangerous. And dealing with it here. Of course, that's an on-the-spot decision, but I think the history that we've seen, the recent history that we've seen is to keep the kids in school.
Yeah.
And I think that if, from a policy perspective, if there's a way that we can do something such as the restorative justice piece, because the practice is where the rubber hits the road. And while we can get data on that, that is a means thing, that we just want to make sure what we read and what this sort of rule is has some restorative justice piece in there, and maybe that is how we address it through the policy piece. And
Is
then
that
from
through the
data.
treatment of students and staff that we just went through?
No, I think it's
Well, that was just staff.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, that's just
that
staff.
was just staff.
Okay.
This is the student piece, so.
Student conduct and discipline, yeah. And I wonder, I mean, so having said the restorative justice piece, I do want to avoid getting the means.
Right.
But the policy does talk about suspension and expulsion.
It does, it's pretty heavy in that.
Yeah.
But
In the
I think that
procedure.
you're right, it gives the, kind of like what we experienced in our last executive section, that there is,
Mitigating circumstances.
yeah, and I
Yes.
felt
To
like
be
in the other,
considered.
is this the
Right.
same policy we used in the executive session? Can I talk,
Last one.
last month? I felt like it was a different policy.
Weapons.
The weapons policy.
This is,
Okay,
yeah, this
okay.
is,
Because
they're kind of tied.
there was that language around, being
Intent.
able to make
Intent.
intent and investigation.
Mitigating circumstances.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So that felt like it wasn't like, oh, you did this, you're done,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Good. So I think with the little bit of cleanup that you have there, I think, are we okay with the removing of the signature requirement? Because if we're not doing it, we're out of compliance with the
Right.
policy by not having it. And the knowledge of, that it is available, whether read or not, is, again, back to your comment about ignorance, is
Not an excuse.
no excuse.
Mhm.
So if we were okay with taking that out,
Mhm.
we'll have that cleaned up and bring it back next time.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, just this restorative piece, I mean,
Right.
Oh, do you want to?
How would you put that in
Where
there
does it
without it
fit?
being
Yeah.
means?
yeah.
I think it would be a means.
Is it in the, does it fall into the procedures piece? Where you
Well,
have
it could
that
be
as a-
procedures, I mean, without stating any specific practices. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know if it's policy or procedure. You guys know better than I do, but, that the approach is intended to be restorative rather than punitive. Something that's sort of a broad statement of values that then you could drill down into in procedures, in the next levels down. I mean, because you're right, I don't want to get into means. But I do think that a restorative kind of outlook is kind of a values piece that we do want to embody. And if all of us turn over next year, a year gone, and the rest of us are gone, for whatever reason, I would hope that that remains in
Stays.
ink, no matter who's in the building.
Yeah.
Where
So,
would
I
it
mean, yeah,
fit?
I'm finding it difficult to kind of just say, yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And figure out where it would fit in ink, because I'm also thinking about the discipline plan that's cited in this policy a lot,
Mm.
which is basically, saying, here's the expectations that we have for students.
Yep.
We expect you to, respect the place, respect people, each other,
Sure.
those kinds of things. And then you really get down into the procedures here of particular things and particular policies, whether it's weapons or substances in those types of situations. So I would think that the specific concept of restorative justice would belong more in the discipline plan and the handbook and the procedures.
Right.
And I wonder how you take the tenets of that.
Yeah.
And maybe it belongs up in the top there somewhere,
Well-
where some of the verbiage
Yeah.
around safe, orderly, civil, but
Or, I mean, so it says administrative responsibilities of principal and consultation with educational staff, which maybe that should say the superintendent rather than the principal, right? And for administrative responsibilities, since that's how it works in this building, right? I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to say principal, because basically, They do it with their staffs and then,
Okay. But isn't this policy us directing?
or you could say superintendent or designee, I guess.
Mhm.
Would be cleanest.
Right, because we don't designate the principal to do anything, right, as a
Right,
board?
right.
So anyway,
That's
it,
actually a good point.
Yeah.
I
Hadn't
would
thought of it
imagine-
that way. Our policy directing
The principal.
through the superintendent,
Yeah.
not directing the principal.
yeah, yeah. But it sort of describes what that plan should look like, right? So clear guidelines for student behavior, which is what you were talking about. Guidelines may include provisions for the suspension or expulsion of students who engage in misconduct on school property, so it tells you what that plan should look like. It doesn't tell you specific nature of the plan, but I think that's the place.
Could you put in provisions for the suspension, expulsion, or the restorative practice? You know, like, just like, because expulsion and suspension and restorative, it doesn't have to be restorative justice, but some sort of
Yeah.
restorative.
Practice of some sort.
Blah, blah, what, you know, like, so it's not necessarily naming a specific program, but these are your three options.
Not
Restoratives, right, restorative something, and then suspension or expulsion, so that it's one of the, you know, if you can name expulsion and suspension, why can't you name something like restorative?
Right.
Especially when the
Right.
procedures seem to point toward trying to keep the kid in that restorative mode first.
Right,
Exactly,
because you
right.
wanna hit that first, with, what we were just talking about, that there's space for that, you
Yeah.
know, like in terms of, what was the word? I'm sorry, my brain is dead. Anyway, there was the option for that, like we had in the last, policy around weapons. It allowed us to.
Oh, mitigating
Mitigating.
circumstances.
Mitigating
Yeah.
circumstances, so that, you know, around mitigating of being able to have restorative options as equal option as suspension and expulsion.
Hmm.
And that doesn't specifically name a specific program.
Yep.
It
Yeah, I mean, they're
Find
principles.
something-
I mean, like restorative principles, some, like
There
a
you
plan
go.
that is grounded in restorative principles or something like that. And, I mean, if, I wonder, this is all like a balancing act when we're thinking about this means versus end stuff, but I think we're pretty safe if we're talking about sort of values and principles at this level.
To the restorative
Yeah.
versus
And
the
broad.
punitive.
A plan that is based on restorative principles, and only as a last resort would end up with sort of expulsion and suspension type approaches.
And in the procedures, you figure out how to draw that line.
Exactly. And I would add, a discipline plan. Now, tell me if I'm overstepping here, Sean, but a discipline plan that would be grounded in kind of an overarching kind of behavioral model. What you pick it, what is it called? PBIS or responsive
Social
classroom,
thinking,
social
responsive classroom,
whatever, But let's have like a cohesive, system-wide plan, because that backs it up to not just the incident, but like how you're managing behavior way in the beginning.
And you're restoring the
Right.
human being.
And it's all
know,
based on
that's what-
restorative principles if things
Right,
deviate from that plan, and only as a very last resort, are we looking at
like
things like expulsion and suspension and so forth.
Could that be like, almost like the first paragraph?
I
The
think-
opening paragraph?
Oh, well, maybe.
Believes
That was
in.
one of my first spots of
Okay.
thinking about where to
Okay.
put that, because isn't expulsion, is it a disciplinary procedures?
That's right. Safe, orderly, civil,
Restorative or disciplinary procedures.
Mm-hmm. Supported by a
Clear and
consistent,
fair,
clear.
restorative or disciplinary procedures.
I don't know. Is that enough to go on to make a proposal to her, Sean, or do we have to do this ourselves?
I can figure it out and bring it back. if that's
Yeah.
what you like.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to solve it here,
I think
but
the
Not here at
intent
9:30
is.
at night, we are not
Let's
gonna
move
like-
on.
But I think the intent is to move through the restorative
Yes. that-
Yeah.
phase in the policy mentality.
Yep.
As a
I'm-
primary
The goal
source.
really is that kids are in school as much as
Yes.
possible
Yeah.
and that they're learning
They're
from
learning.
disciplinary situations.
voila, there we go. Because
That was so simple.
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
After 10
It's,
minutes of
this is
discussion.
right.
And it is those little brush strokes within policy that broadens out, that if we can say expulsion and suspension,
I think so.
we can say restorative and staying in school to learn through these disciplinary actions. Like, that's what we're here to do, is to make whole the human
Educate.
being,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
to
Yep.
Okay.
break him down.
Good.
Right, and, yeah, order is not the goal, it's a means.
Okay, woo, that was good.
Good work.
All right, thank you. I take back everything I said about not being prepared. As I should. Very well done, thank
You know,
you.
I think the Burlington folks were missing this discussion, like they, you know,
Yeah,
when
'cause
they
this
were
is a
like, you guys
policy
haven't,
discovery."
you guys haven't talked about
Right.
anything yet.
Like you said,
Yeah, you should have let him stay
there's
so
no
they could see the
discussion.
discussion.
Yeah. They got enough of
They
their
can
own.
watch it.
They got enough of their own.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, I'm sure that's the first thing you're gonna do tonight.
All right, so we'll see that one back again.
Yep.
Next one, 6172, policy on non-English language background. Feels like we should be able to write this one for a standard, because I
Yeah.
think, I read this one with a lens toward, how are they screwing this up because they don't know? Right? It was a very different than looking at it from the other piece.
What can we take from it, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
or what can we add back to it?
Yeah. Right, I mean, the usual one is what can we take from it, and this one, this one
Right,
is saying.
right, but I, reading down through the procedures on this thing were
Yeah, they're tight.
extremely, I certainly would not do anything, even consider doing with that, but I think the base policy,
The only thing
Really?
that I see is the title, you know, the language a little bit versus limited English proficiency versus non-English language background.
this is required, right?
Mhm.
And so by required, is there a title on the required, or can we, or is the intent the
This,
required piece?
I believe, limited English proficiency is more recent or more up to speed than non-English. There's been a big shift to, you know, that the negative
Understanding.
descriptor.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
I was here.
So we change the
that's
header
fine.
here to the limited
To me,
English
it's fine.
proficiency students.
Mhm. And then I think there's just one more use of it down in the
Yeah,
paragraph,
third-
Board of Trustees.
Third line,
Yeah.
line up from the bottom. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, other than that, that one seemed, the procedures are the piece there that we want to make sure we're
Right.
doing everybody well. All right.
Mike, are you blind?
No, I just got a tap finger that double taps too quick. Okay, so we will see that one up. And so the legislative item we moved because of the global engagement discussion. And any recent activity? Julian, again, I wanted to just very much mention my thanks for getting involved with Sean and the state folks on the budget. I think your passion came out in the budget meetings, and it continued with your discussions with the legislature. So I thank you very much for that. I think it was good for the community, and if they don't know, I want to thank Julian and Sean for taking that advocacy forward for us. Thank you. Good. Other than the penguin plunge, I haven't had too much lately. Oh, did you see the picture that was up here earlier?
No.
There were a picture of Sean and Rainbow and I and Rebecca and Robin. What I really wanted to know is not necessarily the picture. Who's in the picture? Maybe who's not in the picture.
Oh.
Just thoughts for next year.
Nice team.
I'm in there too.
Nice.
Good team. This is
Well done.
This is our friend Rainbow down here.
That's great. Where's the horse? Oh,
That's-
there's the horse.
that's
Oh, I
Rainbow.
see.
That's Rainbow.
I see.
It seems to keep showing up.
That's great.
That's a really great
And-
picture.
and-
Well done, you guys.
I would,
Yeah.
I would totally love to be a part of that sometime.
It was worth it. It was not as bad as I expected by any means. Yep.
But now, where did we end up with? There was a bit of a competition, a friendly competition with other school districts in the state. How do we end up on that one?
We ended up third or fourth, I believe.
Ah.
CVU was just under 50,000
Woo.
at the weekend, and we were at
Population.
12 and a half.
Wow.
So, which brings us to almost $38,000 over 3 years
Wow.
for Special Olympics.
Now, if we were looking at
And the unified program.
Yeah.
money
Focus.
raised for the Penguin Pledge per equalized pupil.
Sweet.
We might be number
Yes,
one.
that's the
thinking,
formula.
yeah.
I think we won.
All right, with that, we are,
That's what diving looks like.
we will move into a brief, oh, sorry, any other items, sorry.
Important
Yep,
events.
yep.
Are we doing, so we have a community dinner coming up on February
Yep.
16th that we are hosting. And are we doing that with the city? Is the city
Yes,
joining this
yep,
this year?
yep.
So
We're
it'll be the
gonna
same
both do
kind
it together, same format. They're gonna present theirs, we're gonna present ours.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, that was
And
wonderful.
then we'll do it again the night before, on February 29th. We'll do it
Right.
again in the PAC.
Okay, just want to make sure that the city was with us on that. That's
Yep,
great. I
yep,
like
they're
that.
definitely in.
Okay.
They've got some good news on their end, so of course you get the CLA help them considerably. Good. Anything else before we move to a brief executive session on an update on labor negotiations?
Is there a flyer?
Yeah, we're putting that together right now. We're finishing that up right now. We'll get it mailed out, we'll use it. And it basically, it'll be the same format, updated, rearranging some things for, getting the right message in the right spot.
Yeah, good.
Or the better message in a better spot, so. And then we'll have the package ready for the community dinner.
Oh, Jen and I have a public presentation tomorrow for our board election.
Oh, with the RETN update, yeah.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're both in?
No, I
Scheduling
can't do
conflicts.
it.
No, you're both in for getting your name on the ballot and everything is good
Conflicts.
for continuity.
Do you have any challengers?
Unopposed on my end. I
Yep.
think Jen's got 3 or
Both
4 challenges.
You got some friends in your back pocket?
Always carries his friends in his back pockets.
All right, anything else?
That's it.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good, I would accept a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay,